Pokémon, medicine and martial arts. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 501, The Battle Restarts? The Battle of the Kings? As the smoke gradually cleared, Changlong's vision gradually cleared. But just as a shadow flashed by, a glimmer of light gradually grew in Changlong's vision, like lightning tearing through the darkness. It was so swift, the sharp wind stung Changlong's face, causing it to sting slightly. Pikachu, Pikachu's voice, crisp yet soft and endearing, echoed. Bang! The dull sound of flesh colliding echoed, and Changlong's head, once held high, instantly tilted to the side, its body about to fall. But it finally managed to hold itself steady. Changlong, now filled with bewildered rage, was actually wounded by a creature so much weaker than him, and even embarrassed by it. How could he tolerate this? Even though he was usually gentle and disliked fighting other Pokémon. But this was a matter of pride, and the inherent dignity of a champion-level Pokémon. How could he allow a mere creature so much weaker than him to show off his power? Furious, Dragonite didn't even need Kanato's command, it launched a freeze beam at Pikachu. However, Pikachu, now completely free of all constraints, was no easy target. Leveraging its speed and small size, it dodged and dodged Dragonite's freeze beam. But that wasn't all. Pikachu was no pushover. While dodging the freeze beam, it would occasionally lash Dragonite with its iron tail, inflicting a harassing attack. It was unclear whether Pikachu's repeated iron tail strikes were genuine harassment or revenge for Dragonite's previous mischief. Trainer Yu, however, saw this as a different story. He understood Pikachu's actions to avenge the previous frustration of not even being able to touch Dragonite's edges. Seizing this opportunity, he could openly give Dragonite a good beating, unleashing all the pent-up anger within him. But as the saying goes, if you walk by the river too often, you'll get your feet wet. Just as Pikachu unleashed Iron Tail once again, preparing to lash out at Dragonite's neck, Dragonite, with its sharp eyesight, spotted an opening and, without hesitation, unleashed a powerful Taishan pressure. Pikachu, still mid-air, performing a stunning 360-degree spin and lashing out with Iron Tail, suddenly felt his head go dark. The once clear sky was shrouded in dark clouds, so dense that not a single ray of light could be seen. Then, Pikachu felt his body suddenly move, followed by a sudden, muffled thud in his ears, followed by a scream, and then, decisively, his instincts were gone, completely losing his ability to fight. While this sequence seemed long, it only took a few breaths. Pikachu's petite body was still pinned firmly beneath Dragonite, unable to move. What the hell? What's happening? How could this happen? Even Yu was still unaware. When he finally did, he saw this scene. Yu's emotions were like a roller coaster ride, the ups and downs were simply too intense. If he weren't young and a warrior with a strong heart, he'd probably have had a heart attack. Is this the saying that life's ups and downs come too quickly? Even Ziba and Du, two of the highest rank, were caught off guard by the scene before them. What the hell? Wasn't the fight so intense earlier? How come Pikachu is being suppressed now? Ziba smacked his lips, a little unsure. After all, based on his previous performance, in Ziba's eyes, Pikachu was truly the unstoppable cockroach. Even later in the battle, there was even a feeling of arm wrestling with a champion-level Pokémon like Dragonite. Looks like I'm the winner. Little Yu, you're no good. You really can't do this. You need to go back and practice more, Kona laughed, covering her mouth with her hands, seemingly unconcerned. Her beautiful eyes twinkled as she looked at Yu, a unique charm. And if anyone was the most excited at this moment, it had to be Nobuno Oolong. Seeing the winner decided, Nobuno Oolong looked relieved. He didn't even bother to confirm the outcome, completely disregarding his usual dutiful refereeing duties. He quickly announced the result and then bolted away. After all, while he expressed dissatisfaction with Yu, unwilling to admit that Yu was superior, he still deeply acknowledged it. Seeing Yu, who was even stronger than him, being utterly defeated by the female Tyrannosaurus, he didn't want to follow in her footsteps. You're just a woman, aren't you useless? You're so scared, It's really shameful, seeing his brother running away in such a disgraceful manner. Du couldn't help but hold his forehead and cursed in a low voice, looking angry at his brother for not fighting back. Shiba couldn't help but jump out to spoil the show again. He glanced at Shiba, who was standing next to him with a very arrogant look, and a malicious smile appeared on his face. You talk as if you are so good. If you are good, then do it. I don't know who was almost beaten into autism by Konora. Shiba, I think you're itching again. Do you need me to loosen up your bones? How about we practice together? Come on, who's afraid of who? We haven't had a Pokemon battle for a long time since the previous King Challenge. It's a good opportunity to see if your strength has improved, Shiba said as he started to do warm-up exercises. The joints in his body made a crackling sound like frying beans. Ah, how dare a defeated warrior claim to be brave. Du was also beginning to feel a surge of fighting spirit. After all, during the previous King of Kings challenge between him and Ziba, although he had won Ziba, it was only by a slight margin. He wasn't called the Dragon Messenger for nothing. The word flying completely suppressed the fighting-type Pokemon in Ziba's hands. However, despite thinking so in his heart, Du didn't intend to say it out loud. This is a different time. Come on, I'm thirsty as hell, Ziba roared, even performing a dashing flying kick, gazing at Du with a provocative look. Chapter 502, Endless Passion and Endless Fighting. The commotion from Shiba and Du quickly drew everyone's attention. After all, they were both among the region's renowned 4 heavenly kings, public figures who naturally commanded considerable attention. Although the battleground in the Pokemon Center's backyard was currently occupied only by Yu, Serena, and a few other members of the group, they didn't retract the incapacitated Pokemon into their Pokeballs as they would with other Pokemon. Instead, Yu ran directly into the battleground, holding Pikachu in his arms, intending to personally deliver it to Miss Joy. Meanwhile, Kona had already collected Dragonite into his Pokeball. Since Yu's side was closer to the Pokemon Center, Kona refrained from actively approaching Yu, intending to join him directly. Meanwhile, Serena and the other 2 women, watching from outside the battleground, were unfazed by the commotion caused by Shiba and Du, 2 of the most prominent figures in the Pokemon Center. Instead, they all rushed over to join Yu as he approached, carrying Pikachu. And just like that, Yu was suddenly surrounded by 4 girls of varying appearances, their noses lingering with the distinct scent of their own bodies. If Shiba, Du, or Yulongs and I were to witness this scene again, they'd probably wonder what they would think. Du and Shiba, the 2 kings in particular, would probably become withdrawn or even vomit blood, imagining themselves engaged in a brutal, man-on-man fight while Yu was surrounded by beautiful women, enjoying the sight. But they couldn't see it now. One had already fled, and the other 2 were locked in a brawl. They didn't care about the girls. In their eyes, only Pokemon battles reigned supreme. Dating is the worst kind of thing. Isn't a man-on-man fight just delicious? Shouldn't we go check on Du and Shiba? Or, Yu, the only boy among the 5, spoke up, his words and eyes filled with unconcealed excitement. After all, the idiom sympathy could apply to boys. While Yu didn't know exactly what the 2 were doing, he could guess pretty closely. However, before Yu could finish his words, a gentle look from Kona startled him, causing him to swallow hard. Why are you going? That's between 2 adults. Why are you, a child, meddling in this? Kona's tone was irritating. After all, she was the ladylike Ice Queen. She hated fighting and violence. Hurry up, don't dawdle. Your Pikachu are still unconscious, Kona urged again. This time, they didn't even give Yu a chance to speak. They simply grabbed his arm and dragged him straight into the Pokemon Center. The 2 of them seemed incredibly intimate, and Serena and the other 2 girls had mixed feelings. If Growlithe or Snorlax had been around again, they would have definitely smelled the lingering scent of jealousy in the air. How can they be so close? Serena thought, watching the scene quietly from behind, stamping her foot in annoyance. What's this feeling? Why does seeing Yu and Kona being so intimate make me feel a subtle pang of pain? Is this the proverbial jealousy? Air thought, biting her lower lip, her gaze vexed as the 2 figures, chatting and laughing, entered the Pokemon Center. Even Xiaoxu, who usually appeared impassive, felt a surge of mixed emotions. Her beautiful eyes stared blankly at Yu and Kona as they entered the Pokemon Center. Perhaps, from all the time together, they'd already been familiar with each other. Perhaps, even more subtly, they'd already accepted each other. But today, this sudden obstacle caused Xiaoxu, and Serena completely off guard. For a fleeting moment, they felt a panic and anxiety that Yu was about to leave them. "Everyone, get out of here. Let's go in quickly. Otherwise, Yu will run off with Kona." Air was the first of the three to come to her senses. She glanced at the empty space ahead, her smile a little forced. The three women exchanged glances, each reading something intriguing in the other's eyes. Then, in unison, they all returned to the Pokémon Center. Not many people were watching the fierce battle between the two kings, Shiba and Du. This led to the fact that Yudu and Ziba's Pokémon battle was completely devoid of spectators. Fortunately, the two grown men were still full of vigor and vitality, so they didn't catch a cold in the snow. However, they both felt a bit mixed up. After all, although it was a private fight, it was still in public. They had chosen a park with a designated battle area. Yet, there were no spectators, even though they fought fiercely and made a lot of noise. A faint sense of sadness filled both of them. Was it because their popularity had waned? Or perhaps it was because they were fighting in the Kalos region, not on their home turf. Otherwise, if they wanted to watch the battle normally, tickets would be incredibly expensive, and even then, people would still rush to buy them. Did they have to pay to watch? Wouldn't it be better to watch for free? Those people were truly wasteful and despicable. Although the lack of spectators made these two Kanto region's kings feel a chill in their hearts, their passion for Pokémon battles couldn't be dampened. The sudden surge of passion and fighting spirit, even on this cold, snowy night, created a unique spectacle. The passion never ceases, the battle never ends. This not only reflects these two kings, but also the countless Pokémon trainers. Chapter 503 Seeking Advice. The next day, Yu woke up early. As usual, he did his morning exercises and practiced with his Pokémon. But what was going on today? Xiaoxu, who usually rose early and made breakfast for them wherever they were, was unusually lazy today. If Xiaoxu was this way, then the others wouldn't wake up until the sun hit their butts. Just as Yu was planning to show off his skills this morning and borrowed the Pokémon Center's kitchen, he was about to show off his skills when someone unexpected appeared. Seeing Kona, Yu was filled with surprise. In his impression, Kona was definitely not the type to wake up early. He was even as good at staying in bed as Serena and Air. However, Kona didn't bother Yu after his appearance. Instead, he played with Yu's Pokémon. Suicune, the legendary beast, was especially a focus for Kona. Of course, there's also Pikachu, the adorable Pikachu who has charmed countless girls and is known as the Pikachu God. Even in the kitchen, Yu could still hear its melodious, silvery laughter emanating from the yard. And of course, as Yu's Pokémon, their honesty in that battle was renowned. While Kona had unleashed all his Pokémon for everyone to play with, the Pikachus wouldn't miss the opportunity to learn from the veterans like Dragonite. After all, the strength of both teams was clear. Even though Kona only had 3 main Pokémon, including Dragonite, and the rest were newly captured and trained, they were still not to be underestimated. Putting aside the actual strength of both Pokémon, the gap between the two trainers' levels alone was more than a chasm. Suicune, in particular, was incredibly excited and delighted after learning from Yu last night that the trainer who defeated his Pokémon was actually an Ice-type master. Last night, if it weren't for the fact that he still needed to be treated by Miss Joy and that he needed time to recover, Suicune would have been so excited that the roof of the Pokémon Center would have been blown off by his water cannon. Although he was a legendary Pokémon, most ordinary Pokémon would resist learning from him, or perhaps be too embarrassed to do so. But with Suicune, these things were completely absent. Yu, as a warrior himself, especially a battle fanatic like him, was almost always willing to learn from others, sometimes even brazenly asking for advice or guidance on his own shortcomings. This was the philosophy Yu always instilled in his Pokémon. To become strong, you must learn to be humble and learn from others. No matter how inferior they are, as long as they are stronger than you, that's enough. After all, what we want to learn is their abilities, not their behavior. Therefore, for various reasons. After yesterday's battle, Yu's Pokémon all knew that the other Pokémon were truly extraordinary. Consequently, they disregarded stats and instead sought out a Pokémon they'd taken a liking to, asking for advice on battle techniques and the like. Look at Suicune's humble yet thoroughly enjoying demeanor. It made Longlong itch with a vengeance. But there was nothing he could do. After all, his trainer was so fond of this Suicune. He'd held her in his arms, never letting her go. That was the one he envied, the one he couldn't even enjoy. Cheng Cheng, damn it, damn it, damn it. While his body was enjoying it, Suicune's heart was resisting. HMPH, don't even think you can seduce me. I'm a divine beast with strong principles. Don't think beauty can hinder my progress. It's impossible. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Although Suicune was briefly upset after yesterday's defeat, he was still feeling down. But at this moment, Suicune completely abandoned his pride as a legendary Pokémon, completely letting go of any slight prejudice he had against Dragonite. He was like a student facing his teacher, his attitude completely respectful and humble. While Suicune had let go of his prejudices and humbly sought instruction, Dragonite was furious. Who was yelling? Suicune's back had taken over the very spot he'd envied and desired most. And judging by the situation, he didn't even seem to appreciate it. Even though he was a beautiful and magnetic Dragonite, it was still incredibly irritating. If they weren't both water-type Pokémon, and if his trainer wasn't there, Dragonite would probably have fired another freeze beam at Suicune, just to feel the thrill of his heart. Dragonite wasn't afraid of legendary Pokémons at all. You have to know that since debuting with my trainer, I've fought hundreds of battles, big and small. I've encountered at least 38, if not 50, opponents with legendary beasts, and I've faced opponents stronger than myself. But what about now? Neither I nor my master have reached the pinnacle of the pyramid. Furthermore, although you're a legendary water beast, your water bloodline is far more noble than mine. Even if you're incredibly talented, you haven't yet reached your full potential. You're just a younger brother. You're not convinced? Then forget it, let's fight again. Don't talk about bullying. I only know I'm stronger than you, and my fists are bigger and harder. This is the pure and unforgiving law of the jungle. However, our legendary beast, Suicune, possesses a remarkably persevering and unwavering spirit. Those big, watery eyes flickered as he looked at Dragonite, as if he were acting coquettishly, as if saying, promise, promise, just promise me. But at this moment, no Pokémon knew that Longaio was devastated at the moment, especially after seeing Suicune's coquettish look. If it weren't for the fact that it was a Pokémon, and a champion-level Pokémon at that, it would probably have cursed at this moment. Chapter 504 Asking for Gifts. Are you kidding me? You're a male divine beast, so please stop acting so cute, okay? And if you're being cute, you're not adorable, let alone handsome. Fueled by a certain anger, Suicune's eyes grew increasingly unpleasant. In reality, from a Pokémon aesthetic, Suicune was quite handsome. Add to that the unique aura of a divine beast, and he looked like an ethereal immortal. A female water Pokémon with a weak will might have fallen head over heels for Suicune. But what kind of Pokémon is my own? How could I, like those slutty Pokémon, be so careless? Hey, stop it, big brother. If you keep acting cute, I'm going to throw up. Where's your dignity as a supreme divine beast? Did some hungry Growlithe eat your integrity last night? Chenglong screamed inwardly, but for the sake of face, he couldn't show it on the surface. He could only put on an awkward yet polite smile. Finally, as if surrendering, as if accepting his fate, Chenglong finally lowered his proud head like a defeated turkey chick under Suicune's expectant gaze. Then, under Suicune's delighted gaze, Chenglong began to teach Suicune, the divine water beast. Suicune was incredibly attentive throughout the entire process. After all, Chenglong was not only an ice type, but also a water type, so he had a lot to teach him. And not just combat techniques, but even water and ice type skills alone were more than enough for Suicune to learn. Thus, Suicune's journey of seeking instruction began amidst both pleasure and suffering. Meanwhile, Dragonite's journey of teaching, brimming with indignation, began. For a moment, the entire Pokémon Center's backyard battlefield seemed remarkably quiet and peaceful. The occasional explosion from a skill seemed less abrupt. Kona, the only human present, showed no signs of embarrassment or discomfort. Instead, he beamed as his Pokémon instructed his adopted brothers, a sly glint in his eyes. Yu quickly prepared breakfast and brought it to the table. He didn't eat first, nor did he invite Kona to join him. Instead, he presented a large collection of bowls, large and small, filled with a variety of Pokémon food. Thank you, Dragonite and everyone. I'll treat you all to a feast while you teach Suicune and Pikachu their battle skills. He could hear the voice before he saw the person. Yu brought the Pokémon food to the battle arena, smiling and calling out to Longyun and Kona's Pokémon. Everyone, Please feel free to eat as much as you can. These Pokemon foods are specially prepared by Xiaoxu, with flavors tailored to the different attributes of Pokemon. Pikachu and the others will love them, so try some too. Yu greeted each Pokemon with exceptional enthusiasm. After all the Pokemon had begun to enjoy the delicious food, Yu finally came over to Kona, standing side by side with him, watching the Pokemon happily enjoying their food. "What are you doing?" Kona asked, puzzled, as her hand suddenly extended to his face. Yu twitched his lips, waved his hand without saying anything, the meaning of which was self-evident. But Kona was still confused, not understanding what Yu was up to. He was extending his hand. Was he asking her to hit him? Had Yu done something to her? Feeling guilty, she came to confess in advance. Through this slap on the hand, a way of apologizing, asking for forgiveness. That must be it, no mistake. This kid is truly despicable, actually doing something bad behind my back. I can't forgive him so easily. Oh, what's the point of a slap on the hand? She's grown up, not a child anymore. She should be punished more severely. I must spank her butt until it's broken and ripped to pieces. That way, she'll learn her lesson. Pa! A crisp snap echoed, and Yu felt pain in her palm. Turning around, she saw Kona glaring at her. Yu's face was filled with confusion, and she felt extremely aggrieved. She asked, "Sister Kona, what are you doing? Why are you hitting me? Oh, how dare you say that?" Kona looked very annoyed, convinced that Yu had done something bad behind her back. Even after being discovered by him, he still didn't repent, acting like a wicked person who complained first. He was even more furious for no reason. With his hands on his hips, he said angrily, "Did you do something bad behind my back? You big pig's hoof." Kona's mood at this moment was like that of a wronged young wife. Yu was stunned and completely confused. What the hell was going on? Big pig's hoof, little pig's hoof? It was inexplicable. Yu felt wronged, but the baby didn't say anything. With a sad face, he felt like Jun's nose was about to appear before his eyes. "Sister, you are my real sister. Do you think I am that kind of person? Look at my sincere eyes." After hearing this, Kona really looked at him seriously, and then nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, it's very similar, very similar." Yu wanted to turn around and leave immediately, but in order to get the so-called gift, he really had to endure it again. He weakly stretched out his palm in front of Kona again. Seeing that Kona was about to raise her hand to slap him, Yu was frightened and quickly retracted her hand, and Kona was hit in the air. Kona narrowed her beautiful eyes slightly, and two extremely dangerous auras burst out of her eyes. "Give me an explanation. Otherwise, you know the consequences." Yu was so scared that she immediately set her head, and her hands subconsciously covered her buttocks. "Sister, let's talk it over, let's talk it over. What are you doing?" Yu smiled awkwardly, and slowly moved back. I just want to ask you for the gift you promised to give me before. Is it really necessary to do this?" Chapter 505 Gift. A gift. Upon hearing Yu's ultimate goal, Kona, still dazed, called out subconsciously. Seeing the dangerous look on Kona's face recede, and finally getting to the point, Yu immediately nodded his head like a chick pecking at rice, fearing another unexpected incident. Then, silently, Yu returned to Kona's side and once again silently extended his hand flat in front of him. As if feeling that this wasn't enough to express his feelings, Yu even shook his palm, implying that he would quickly hand the gift over. However, what followed was to utter disappointment for Yu. Kona rolled his eyes delicately and said in a sullen tone, "Do you want a gift? If you want a peerless beauty, I have one. A peerless beauty. Where is it? Where is it? Where is the peerless beauty?" Yu glanced around. 3 dark lines appeared on Kona's fair forehead. Her fists were clenched, veins throbbing in them. "Yu, I see your butt's really itchy. Do you want me to give it a good beating?" Kona gritted her teeth. No. It's just a joke. Sister Kona, you're the most gentle, kind, and beautiful woman in the world. You wouldn't go back on your word and not give me a gift, right?" Yu licked her cheek, completely abandoning even her own integrity. The Pokemon nearby, munching on Pokemon food, were all furious. Some, even more so than usual, roared, like a crowd of onlookers. Pikachu and the other Pokemon silently turned their heads away. Especially after seeing the look the Pokemon on Dragonite's side gave them, they all silently lowered their heads and began to eat the Pokemon food in their bowls. "This is so embarrassing. Never tell them you know this kind of Pokemon again. Oh, and that trainer who's like a bootlicker. After hearing Yu ask for a gift again, Kona's anger suddenly faded, and instead she wore a brilliant, cunning smile. Of course. How could I possibly be the kind of person you imagine? Do I look like someone who takes everything and refuses to acknowledge it? So, what exactly is my gift? Yu's face was filled with anticipation. Meanwhile, her mind was beginning to wander. Could you be giving me a Pokemon egg? Is that even possible? And ideally, a legendary Pokemon egg? Perhaps something like Articuno, though perhaps it's a bit underwhelming compared to other powerful legendary Pokémons. But after the pearl had been obscured by dust, it finally fell into her hands, and she nurtured it into the strongest being, and then there was that look of regret on Kona's face. Just thinking about it was quite exciting. Well, if it's not Pokemon eggs, then giving some evolution stones is also acceptable. When the time comes, keep the useful ones and use the useless ones to exchange for money to supplement the family income. This way, he won't be like a hungry man. Whenever there is a Pokemon battle with money as the stakes, he is often seen rushing in first. But Yu stretched out his hand for a long time, and Wei didn't know how many times. He didn't wait for Kona to hand the gift to him. Yu was completely confused. What's going on? Is he being fooled? Where is the gift? I hope he has been cheated again. The idea that happiness must be earned by oneself. Yu spoke again, shaking his palms a few times. Sister, where's the gift? Where's the gift? Why don't you take it out? Stop keeping me in suspense. It's really too uncomfortable. After hearing Yu's urging, Kona's face was filled with surprise. Did I already give you the gift? How come you didn't receive it? Hey, I already gave it to you. But I really didn't receive it. Are you sure you really gave it to me? Yu kept searching through his memories, but after searching for a long time, he couldn't find anything. He was starting to wonder if his memory was failing. No. I clearly gave it to you. Or I asked Long to give it to you for me. Is this true? Yu was really confused for a moment. He turned his head to look at Long, who was quietly eating Pokemon food, waiting for its response. Chenglong didn't disappoint Yu, nodding seriously. If Yu hadn't clearly caught the secret exchange between Chenglong and Kona, he would have believed it. Meeting Yu's somewhat suspicious gaze, Kona didn't flinch or feel guilty at all. Instead, he boldly met his gaze. This lasted only a few seconds. Yu couldn't stand it anymore and quickly turned his head away. You're having a little temper, Kona teased. No, how could that be? You're still saying no. After all, I'm one of the people who knows you better. You're too honest and don't really lie. You probably get nervous when you lie, and that's how you're feeling right now. Kona directly exposed Yu's true identity. Alright. I won't tease you anymore. I'll just tell you straight. Go ahead. He smiled slightly, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. The gift I promised you this time is to have my Pokemon properly train your Pokemon. How exciting and surprising, isn't it? Faced with Kona's boastful words, Yu felt a chill in his heart. How could they deceive an honest person like this? Yu's earlier fantasies seemed to have sprouted a pair of wings and flew away from him. His own divine beast egg, his own little extra cash. Okay, having champion-level Pokemon help train his Pokemon was a very worthwhile gift. But that was only in the eyes of others. Instead of all this nonsense, why not give it some practical meaning? After all, the Pokemon on his side were slowly improving, and they needed time to settle before they could fully unleash their full potential. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 506 Arrangement. Perhaps others would consider it a matter of great joy and excitement to have a champion-level Pokemon to guide their own Pokemon. Well, Yu admitted that was indeed the case. But the biggest difference between him and these people was, who was Yu? He was the illustrious martial artist Yu. Who among those he knew was simple? Let's not talk about those more distant, let's just talk about those closer. Which of Sharona and Kaluna wasn't a champion-level figure? Some of the Pokemon they possessed were even top-tier champions. Therefore, when it came to Pokemon training, it was always better to have high-level Pokemon train his lower-level Pokemon. Yu could easily find these higher-level figures. Well, although Kona was the king of ice types and extremely popular, no matter how he calculated it, Yu still felt he was at a significant disadvantage. After all, his entire Pokemon team only had two, Crab and Suicune. What? Are you completely dissatisfied with this gift? But even if you're not satisfied, there's no chance of regret. Suicune and Pikachu are just there, and they've already accepted it for you. Isn't that right, Pikachu? Suicune, Kona asked with a warm smile. Pikachu and Suicune, who were concentrating on their Pokemon food, were considered the leaders among Yu's Pokemon. Suicune upon hearing Kona's question, Pikachu and Suicune both stopped eating and nodded excitedly. After all, after this period of guidance, Pikachu and the others had not only improved their strength, but they had also gained a lot. Take Pikachu, the leader of the Pokemon group, for example. Its strength, which had been stuck at the level of a quasi-king, was beginning to loosen slightly. This was mainly because Kona didn't have any electric-type Pokemon. Otherwise, Pikachu believed that with his own talent, he would surely improve significantly, perhaps even reaching the level of a king. Next up were Suicune and Crab. After all, these two Pokemon were all water-type Pokemon, while Kona specializes in both ice and water. Of these, the biggest gain was undoubtedly Crab. This was due to the foundation he'd already gained through Professor Oak's training. Add to that the battles Yu had fought since bringing it back, and now, under the training of Kona's water-type powerhouse, White Sea Lion, Crab had evolved into Gigantic Crab, reaching the level of a quasi-king. It was the biggest gain. As for the other Pokemon, they all gained something, to varying degrees. Consequently, every Pokemon connected to them beamed with joy and satisfaction. Yu's teeth ached at the sight. Do you really think you're capable of anything? After just this training, you're also satisfied. That's the price of a gift. That's worth it. You only used it to improve your strength a little bit, and you're still satisfied. But now that things have come to this, Yu couldn't say anything more. After all, Kona was right, she had indeed given the gifts to her Pokemon. Kona simply smiled at this and followed Yu back to the Pokemon Center, waiting for the others to wake up. Yu and Kona didn't have to wait long, though, as Serena and the other two arrived one after another. Upon seeing the delicious breakfast, the three girls were delighted. After a night of getting to know each other, Serena and the other two quickly became playful with Kona, acting like sisters. They could almost play mahjong together. The laughter and chatter between them left Yu stunned. The relationship between these girls was so difficult to comprehend. As for the two celestial kings, Shiba and Du, and the dragon Nebuno, it was unknown what they had been up to last night, but judging by the situation, they probably wouldn't be awake until quite late. Yu and the others didn't wait for them, but went straight to their meal. While they ate, the four women started chatting again, almost completely planning their itinerary for the day. Hey, we finally made it to another town. Let's go for a stroll today. I agree. Fangshou town is quite beautiful. Oh, right. And Serena, it's your birthday tonight while there's more people around. Why don't we celebrate it later? Serena's birthday? Kona asked, puzzled, after taking a sip of her milk. Oh. That's what's going on. That's why. We owe Serena a birthday. Yu had originally wanted to use this opportunity to blend in with the conversation, but before she could say anything, Air finished her words for her. Kona listened intently. After getting to know each other and briefly interacting last night, she and the three women had become somewhat more harmonious. The initial wariness Serena and the other two had held in their eyes was gone. Last night, the four girls had been trying to strengthen their bond, staying up all night, chatting in the private rooms. This had caused Xiaoxia and the other two to completely oversleep. Kona rested her chin on her hand, a thoughtful expression on her face, then smiled softly. Okay, it's settled. We'll go shopping today, then help Serena celebrate her birthday tonight, right? It'll also allow me to relax. What about Du and Shiba? Everyone was familiar with each other by now, so Air didn't add the word MR to her address. HMPH. We don't care about those stinky men. Kona was a perfect example of a queen. Yu's mouth twitched involuntarily. Fuck, they're stinky men, but what about me? Serena's gaze flicked to Yu, and she was about to say something when he interrupted her. Don't look at me. The exchange meeting starts tomorrow, and I need to get myself in shape. Yu's face was serious. Get myself in shape, and then there's going to be some Pokemon training later. Kona immediately saw through Yu's plan. Without giving him a chance to refuse, she transformed from a queen to a queen, unquestioningly saying, "No matter what your excuses, you'll go shopping with us later." Chapter 507 The Arrival of Two Women. While Yu was being dragged along by the women as cheap labor, across the Kanto region, at Vikawa Airport in Vikawa City truly lived up to its reputation as a cosmopolitan city in the Kanto region, bustling with activity. The city was exceptionally bustling day and night. Meanwhile, an international plane from a country on the neighboring sea continent slowly descended from the sky. As the crowd slowly emerged, two stunning figures stood out like a crane among a flock of chickens. Even amidst the crowd, they stood out, their natural beauty barely concealed. Meanwhile, in the airport terminal, an elderly man with ring hair, dressed in a white lab coat, appeared remarkably energetic. However, he was currently engaged in something quite unbecoming of his age and status. He held a name tag aloft, his cloudy yet energetic eyes fixed intently on the boarding gate. At this moment, two stunningly beautiful girls in the crowd also spotted the old man and the name on the sign he was holding. "Sister Kaylin, look over there." The girl in a pale yellow dress tugged at the more mature woman next to her, dressed casually. Following her companion's gaze, the girl's eyes lit up, and she immediately pulled the girl beside her toward the old man. "Oh, you two must be the Chen Kaylin and Lizuner that old man Zhao Kuang mentioned. They're truly beautiful beauties." As the two girls approached, the old man lowered the sign and handed it to a nearby Pokémon. Indeed, the two women were Chen Kaylin and Lizuner. One was Yu's senior sister, the other his childhood sweetheart. Perhaps because of the crowd's obstruction, only as they drew closer could they clearly see a powerful figure standing beside the old man. "You must be the Pokémon my master was talking about, the renowned scholar, Professor Oak." "Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you." Chen Kaylin smiled faintly, displaying her politeness and ladylike demeanor. "Haha, I didn't expect that old man Zhao Kuang would actually speak of me like that in front of you." "That's right, Professor Oak Zucheng, the more serious of the two." Upon seeing the two women as the reason for his visit, Professor Oak's face lit up with a gracious smile, a feeling of closeness. "Hello, Professor Oak." Lizuner also politely extended her hand and shook Professor Oak's. "It's a pleasure to meet you," Professor Oak said with his usual gracious smile. "Is this a wrist wrestler?" Lizuner asked curiously, observing the well-behaved wrist wrestler accompanying Professor Oak. The particular wrist wrestler accompanying Professor Oak was incredibly well-trained, towering over the average wrestler. Therefore, Lizuner asked with a hint of uncertainty in her tone. Chen Kaylin also cast a curious gaze at the arm wrestling, her eyes brimming with curiosity. After all, while these large families were no shortage of powerful Pokémon trainers and champion-level Pokémon, some viewed the primary focus as martial arts. Therefore, outside of a few families focused on Pokémon cultivation, few took the time to meticulously cultivate them. Even with the current trend, the shift in global trends and the shifting landscape of the ancient martial arts world, with the emphasis gradually shifting towards Pokémon, there were still some gaps. This was why Lizuner and Chen Kaylin were so curious. After all, such a unique arm wrestling match wasn't something you'd see very often. "Haha, yeah, that kid is Armstrong. He's the offspring of one of my old buddies, Strange. Don't be fooled by his appearance. He helps me look after the Pokémon at the lab. He's always been a huge help." Professor Oak was instantly perked up at the mention of Pokémon. He placed his hand on Armstrong's head, which was almost reaching his chest. Armstrong, hearing the praise, Armstrong was particularly excited. He waved his arm, which was holding the sign. His muscular form drew glances from passers-by. Even some passing Pokémon had a glint of surprise in their eyes. "By the way, what are Zhao Kuang's plans for you guys?" Professor Oak inquired. "Well, Master, he's letting us both choose." Chen Kaylin relayed Zhao Kuang's words to them. After their conversation last night, Chen Kaylin and Lizuner had gone their separate ways, relaying everything Zhao Kuang had said to them to their grandfather. They had assumed it would take several twists and turns before their grandfather agreed to let them off the hook and travel. But unexpectedly, as soon as they expressed their wish, their grandfather became incredibly excited. While they were still bewildered, he immediately ordered the servants to pack their belongings. Then, the two elders, each holding their granddaughter, entered the office and began handing over family matters. By the time they were done, it was already 2 or 3 in the morning. They had assumed they could rest for a while, staying at least a day or two before leaving. But they were completely surprised to see him play again. He acted like they were a scourge, eager to get them out immediately. The two elders chartered a cart to take them to the airport overnight. As they were leaving, their grandfathers each gave them a Pokeball, instructing them to wait until they arrived to open it. With absolutely no time to rest, Li Zuner and Chen Kalen could only take a short nap on the plane to the Kanto region. So, what are your thoughts? Professor Oak's face was filled with curiosity. He was very eager to know what choices and decisions the two girls would make. We plan to study with you, Professor Oak, for a while. After all, we heard that you was your apprentice, Chen Kalen said their decision without hesitation. Although both women seemed a little sleepy due to lack of sleep, they were filled with excitement at the thought of the beautiful days ahead. Chapter 508 Surprise. Is that so? Then you are very welcome. Professor Oak seemed very happy, and the smile on his face became even brighter. Of course, he would not tell the fact that he would have more free time because he would have two more helpers. At the same time, he finally didn't have to eat instant noodles every day. If he ate more, he would vomit. Although instant noodles are also very delicious, there are many kinds: braised beef flavor, green onion pork ribs flavor. Thinking of this, the old face of Professor Oak couldn't help but pull the corner of his mouth. No, if I think about it any more, I will probably vomit. This has been eaten for almost a month, right? Professor Oak was lost in thought. At this moment, Li Zuner's voice rang out weakly, a hint of embarrassment on her pretty face. Well, how about we talk about this while we're walking? I think I'm feeling a little hungry. Oh, look at me, I've been so caught up chatting with you. Let's go, let's all go back to the institute so I can welcome you back. Dr. Oak slapped his forehead in annoyance and began to take the two women's luggage. Seeing that Dr. Oak was actually about to take their luggage, Chen Kalen and Li Zuner quickly waved their hands. No, we can do it. The luggage is very heavy. Hey, why are you being so polite? Zhao Kuang and I are good friends. Now that we're here, just treat it like home. And don't look at me as an old man. I'm in very good health. I even run around the hill behind my house every day. Dr. Oak smiled, and before Chen Kalen and Li Zuner could react, he had already reached out and grasped the two women's luggage in his hands and was about to start lifting them. But the next moment, a crisp sound suddenly emanated from Professor Oak's body. The expression on his face froze slightly. But he couldn't save face in front of the two juniors, so he silently withdrew his hand with an awkward smile. Well, it just occurred to me that I've been having a cold lately, so I might not be strong enough. How about I let my arm lift it for you? Li Zuner and Chen Kalen knew what the crisp sound was coming from Professor Oak's body. They knew all about the items they were carrying. Despite their delicate appearance, their current martial arts level was comparable to Yu's. Chen Kalen was even stronger than Yu. Therefore, it was understandable that Professor Oak couldn't lift it. If he could, Chen Kalen and Li Zuner would have been more cautious. Wrist strength. The wrist strength was truly impressive. Seeing his trainer's embarrassment, he quickly stepped forward to help the two women lift what Professor Oak considered a heavy load. Furthermore, the effortless manner in which he carried each hand made Chen Kalen and Li Zuner gasp in amazement. Professor Oak's Pokemon were truly remarkable. They knew the weight of their own luggage, and they had considered asking for Pokemon's help before. But either they were too timid or their size was too inconvenient. As expected. This era has truly become the age of Pokemon. Seeing this wrist strength's effortlessness was truly a mixed bag. Professor Oak was a renowned Pokemon expert throughout the Kanto region and even the entire island nation. The Pokemon League had equipped him with the finest equipment. Aside from the large research institute on his back, everything else was completely covered. Professor Oak could simply ask for anything, and the Pokemon League would readily grant his request. When Li Zuner and the other girl followed Professor Oak to a convertible sports car, they were completely stunned. Haha, this sports car is a vehicle assigned to me by the Alliance for transportation, though I usually prefer to use Pokemon. Professor Oak smiled as he opened the door of the red convertible and motioned for the two girls to get in. After Armstrong loaded the luggage into the car, Professor Oak drove the convertible out of Viridian City and headed straight for Pallet Town. Viridian City wasn't too far from Pallet Town, it just needed to pass through the Viridian Forest. After a mere half-hour's journey, Professor Oak returned to the Oak Research Institute with Chen Kalen and Li Zuner. After settling in, Chen Kalen and Li Zuner took up residence at Professor Oak's institute and became his assistants, learning about Pokemon just like Yu had done before. The Pallet Town residents also held a welcoming banquet for the two girls. However, after the two women's delay, the enthusiastic residents finally gave up. Professor Oak, however, brought the two women to Hanako's home, intending to host a family-friendly welcome dinner. This would also be a good opportunity to introduce the newly arrived Lizuner and Chen Kalen to some acquaintances, as they were both quite close to Yufei. Time slipped by quietly amidst the joyous atmosphere. Soon, the day was almost over. Now, let's talk about Chen Kalen and the other two women. The dinner at Xiaozhi's home was a joyful occasion, and everyone got to know each other. Perhaps because it was their first day in a new environment, Chen Kalen and Lizuner, after dinner, went straight back to the accommodations Professor Oak had arranged for them, claiming to rest and pack their belongings. "You two little girls, what brought you back so early?" After Lizuner and Chen Kalen returned to the Oak Research Institute, Professor Oak followed closely behind. Professor Oak, since you're a renowned Pokémon scholar, we have a surprise for you, Lizuner said with a chuckle. After spending a day together, Lizuner, Chen Kalen, and Professor Oak had become quite close. An outsider might have mistaken them for a grandfather and grandchildren. Professor Oak, with Xiaomao as his only grandson, was quite happy to acknowledge these two girls as his granddaughters. So, upon hearing Lizuner's playful words, especially the mysterious look on her face, they were instantly intrigued. Chapter 509, Emperor Yan and Thunder God. Oh, what's the surprise? A rare Pokémon? Or information about some rare Pokémon? Professor Oak, a renowned Pokémon scholar, piqued his interest upon hearing about the surprise, talking about Pokémon almost every 3 sentences. Seeing Professor Oak like this, Lizuner and Chen Kalen couldn't help but giggle. Lizuner was even more playful, sticking out her tongue mischievously. Under Professor Oak's expectant gaze, she uttered a few words. "Actually, we don't know either." "Huh? You don't know? So how can this be considered a surprise?" Professor Oak wasn't angry or annoyed. Instead, he became even more intrigued. "Actually, we really don't know." Chen Kalen felt a little embarrassed at this point. After all, it felt like a joke. Before Professor Oak could ask further questions, Lizuner quickly chimed in. "Actually, here's what happened. Before we came to your place, our grandfather each gave us a Pokeball, saying we couldn't open it until we reached our destination. Since we've been putting it off until now because we haven't had time, and since you're a Pokemon professor, we thought we'd share it with you." "Oh. So that's the case? Thank you very much." Professor Oak seemed delighted. After all, for some people, Pokemon are private, like secret weapons or a means of survival. They wouldn't actively share them with others, let alone two women he'd known for less than 24 hours. Therefore, Professor Oak was deeply touched. His face couldn't conceal his anticipation. 2 Pokemon? That's really exciting. Yeah, well, we can finally have our first Pokemon. What can we expect? Lizuner and Chen Kalen were equally excited and eager. After all, they were children of a large family, even in charge of family affairs. However, for some reason, they never fully possessed a Pokemon of their own. Most of the Pokemon they possessed belonged to their families, effectively acting as bodyguards. Therefore, in a sense, the Pokemon their grandfather had given them were their first real Pokemon. Their excitement was undeniable. Now, with Professor Oak, the renowned Pokemon researcher, witnessing the miracle, Chen Kalen and Lizuner tossed their Pokeballs in unison. "Come out, my Pokemon, go, Pokeball, pop, pop." Then, accompanied by the sound of 2 Pokeballs opening, the 2 Pokemon, enveloped in a red glow, gradually began to reveal themselves. As the red light gradually dissipated, Professor Oak's eyes widened, a look of disbelief on his face. Upon seeing the true forms of the 2 Pokemon, his expression shifted countless times. From initial surprise, it shifted to horror, then horror to excitement, and so on. This, gurgle. Professor Oak swallowed his saliva repeatedly, a look of disbelief still on his face. Could this be the legendary 3 sacred beasts of the Phoenix? So? Entry and Reikau. Indeed, what appeared before Professor Oak were none other than Suicune, the embodiment of the North Wind in Yu's hand, the remaining 2 of the 3 sacred beasts of the Phoenix. Compared to Suicune's ethereal aura, Entei possessed orange-red fur and iron rings on his sturdy limbs. Behind him was a flowing mane like a white cloud, beneath which lay blade-like brown hair. A red hexagram-shaped structure grew on his cheek, and a golden clover-like stalk of hair nestled on his forehead. When he landed from a height, flames erupted from his feet, giving him a majestic presence. As for Reikau, He resembled a saber-toothed tiger, with golden fur, sturdy limbs, and sharp fangs. A black steel headdress adorned the Thunder God's forehead, covering his forehead, nose, and mouth. Beneath it grew an X-shaped beard. His tail, a light blue, shaped like lightning, was tipped with sparks. The white mane on his face and the long, thundercloud-like fur on his back, like a cape, symbolized clouds and cumulonimbus clouds. When the Thunder God ran, arcs of lightning emanated from his feet, imbuing him with an unparalleled majesty. The three sacred beasts each possessed their own unique characteristics, yet each possessed a commanding presence. Their presence evoked an aura of unspoken authority. After repeatedly confirming that he was not dreaming, Professor Oak was beside himself with excitement. If it weren't for the fact that it was night, when the more agitated farmers would have long since fallen into a dream, he would have been tempted to roar out a few times to the moat, venting his excitement. Divine beasts, these were truly divine beasts, rare to encounter. Yet, tonight, two of them stood before him, face to face, within reach. Professor Oak felt his mouth water. And there's no harm without comparison. Look at him. Just arrived, and he's already received such a wonderful welcome gift. And then there's that stingy you. He's always been so stingy when he asks for a Pokemon for research, only to be met with such prevarication. Every Pokemon he sends back is just a way to get him what he wants. Compared to Professor Oak's excitement and trepidation, Lizunar and Chen Kalen seemed much calmer. After their initial excitement, Chen Kalen and Lizunar also calmed down. After all, they were just two mythical beasts, it wasn't like they hadn't seen them before. And what's more, these were the Flame Emperor and the Thunder God, both of whom their grandfathers had owned one. They'd even been raised on their backs. What surprised them was that their grandfathers were willing to spend so much money to give them the offspring of these two mythical beasts to raise. How bold. That was the thought in Chen Kalen and Lizunar's minds at that moment. What the two girls didn't know was that their grandfather had given them two divine beasts to cultivate. Zhao Kuang and Yiyu had played an indispensable role in this. Flame Emperor, please take good care of me from now on. Thunder God, please take good care of me as well. Lizunar and Chen Kalen began to greet their new companions. Chapter 510 Birthday Party. After a brief encounter, Entei and Reikao began to playfully engage with their respective trainers. After all, they were descendants of their grandfather's two legendary beasts. They had met before, and with a pre-existing bond and the joy of reunion, everything flowed naturally. Meanwhile, Professor Oak didn't bother them, but stood quietly by, smiling silently. Although he envied the two legendary beasts before him and wished he could begin studying them immediately, as a Pokemon professor and trainer with ample life experience, he naturally wouldn't disturb the harmonious scene before him. Instead, Professor Oak was happy for Chen Kalen and Lizunar. After all, while he was a renowned Pokemon professor in the region, he also had the part-time job of distributing starter Pokemon to children as they grew older. Seeing their beaming smiles upon receiving their own Pokemon filled Professor Oak's heart with joy, even immense satisfaction. After all, each Pokemon trainer just starting out represented a glimmer of hope. So, upon seeing the two women's heartfelt smiles, Professor Oak didn't bother them, forcing himself to suppress the urge to rush over and snatch the two Pokemon for further research. Even so, despite not disturbing them, Professor Oak wasn't wasting time. He already had some research equipment, quietly observing the two beasts. He even began preparing two research reports on the two beasts. After the two women and the beasts had finished catching up, and with their approval, Professor Oak began his daily research on the two beasts. Meanwhile, while Professor Oak was excitedly studying the two beasts, at the Fangzhou Town Pokemon Center, Yiyu, after a day of shopping with the four women, collapsed on his bed, completely exhausted. Looking at the countless shopping bags, large and small, Yiyu suddenly fell into deep thought. Why is shopping so tiring? Especially carrying bags? It seems this will be a great training activity in the future. Perhaps if Serena or Air needs to go shopping with me sometime, I could bring Pikachu along. Each person carrying several bags would not only maximize their use, but it would also seem to have a positive training effect, indeed, improving their physical fitness. At this moment, the Pikachus were completely unaware of what torture method their master had devised. They were completely immersed in the busy work of reorganizing Serena's birthday party. Although being in a public place like the Pokémon restaurant didn't allow for a particularly good atmosphere, the enthusiasm of the crowd couldn't be dampened, especially with the addition of all the Pokémon, making the atmosphere even more lively. Whether it was A or the others, or the Elite Four, or the Pokémon themselves, they were all busy with their respective tasks. Everything seemed so orderly, and the food for the birthday party was quickly prepared. The birthday party quickly gained momentum, with both people and Pokémon beaming with genuine joy. For a moment, a corner of the Pokémon restaurant became a unique spectacle. The harmonious relationship between people and Pokémon was on full display, their smiles genuinely genuine. Perhaps because of the exchange meeting the next day, Yu excused himself from the party midway through, citing fatigue. No one thought much of it, and given the unusually lively atmosphere, Yu didn't order Pikachu and the others to their evening training. Nor did he return them to their Pokeballs, leaving them to frolic among the other Pokémon. Despite Yu's well-reasoned reasons, Pikachu still sensed something was amiss. Watching Yu's retreating figure, Pikachu paused his playful banter with the other Pokémon. Silently, he watched his trainer's departure, a moment of silence as if he was hesitating and making a decision. Finally, after giving his group of followers a few instructions, he silently followed Yu's departing figure. Compared to the brightly lit Pokémon Center, where occasional laughter emanated from within, the streets outside were already much quieter. Perhaps due to the cold weather, everyone had already returned to their cozy homes and tucked into their warm beds. Not even a single Pokémon could be seen, save for a few who, fearing the cold or otherwise willing to roam outside, seemed to have a reason. Add to that the falling snow, and the town, usually so cheerful in the mornings, suddenly became tranquil. Yu, after saying goodbye to everyone and leaving, didn't return to his room, as he'd said, because he was sleepy. Instead, he walked straight out of the Pokémon Center. He walked along a path outside the still bustling Pokémon Center building, admiring the ever-falling snow. Yu was silent for a long time. After finding a quiet and deserted place and sweeping the snow off the public seats, Yu seemed to be in a daze, staring at the scene in front of him in a daze. I don't know how long it was. It seemed like only a moment, but also seemed like a long time had passed. Yu only felt a little lost on his face, and then he felt a weight on his legs, with a little warmth on them. And because of the strange feeling coming from his body, Yu immediately woke up from his daze. As soon as he lowered his head, he met a pair of smart eyes with learning worries and concerns. Looking at the familiar figure lying on his legs, Yu suddenly showed a happy smile, and his palm subconsciously placed on Pikachu's body, and began to stroke the electric mouse. Pikachu, it's you. Why didn't you stay inside and continue to finish, but ran out? Chapter 511 Tension. Pikachu barked twice in response to its trainer's question, then nudged its little head into Yu's arms, as if trying to please its master. Yu's smile widened, for he knew exactly what Pikachu was trying to say. At that moment, Pokémon and trainer seemed to be in perfect sync. They both smiled happily, their smiles in perfect sync. Yu then returned to his previous state, quietly gazing at the snowy scene ahead, his thoughts unsettled. Pikachu, on the other hand, remained silent, simply lying quietly on Yu's legs, also gazing at the snowy scene ahead. However, after a moment, it closed its eyes, as if dozing, or perhaps contemplating something, acting as a hand warmer. The snow continued to fall, but as the flakes landed within a centimeter of Yu, they seemed to encounter some kind of obstruction, unable to advance even a fraction. They melted into water and blended into the snow beneath Yu's feet. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow's exchange meeting. The thought of competing against masters from all over the world makes my blood boil. Yu suddenly spoke, as if to himself, or perhaps to Pikachu. Pikachu, seemingly interested in the event, opened its previously closed eyes and tilted its head back to look at its trainer. In a sense, tomorrow's exchange meeting can be considered as me competing for my country, bringing glory to it. Yu continued to mutter to himself, his tone devoid of any emotion. Pikachu called out at the perfect moment, as if echoing his trainer's words. Pikachu, do you think so too? Yu asked with a smile, looking down at the little creature on his lap. Pika this time, Pikachu called out twice, as if confirming Yu's question. Later, it seemed to still feel this way, unable to express its emotions, and nodded its head repeatedly. Although I don't quite understand what you're saying, at least I understand the general idea. Thank you, Pikachu, Yu rubbed Pikachu's head with his palm. It might not have been helpful, but perhaps it did. At least, Yu felt his current nervousness eased a little. Indeed, at this moment, Yu realized that the exchange meeting would begin tomorrow. His originally tired body, in this state, surprisingly did not feel the slightest bit of fatigue or sleepiness. Instead, the excitement energized him even more. Yes, Yu admitted. The thought of tomorrow's exchange meeting filled him with anxiety. After all, in normal times, he would face any difficult situation. Yu was known for his ability to handle situations with composure, yet at this moment, he felt nervous, a fact that even Yu instinctively found unbelievable. While Yu hadn't experienced the rigors of events, he had witnessed some grand occasions. After all, during his years of training back home, he hadn't just been idle, he had been fully engaged in improving his abilities. As a result, he had witnessed many grand events, but compared to a national-level exchange conference, this was his first time. After all, most of the events he witnessed during his training were about personal fame and gain, while this exchange conference, on the other hand, was almost a national event. Yu was only a young man who had just reached adulthood, yet he possessed not only a passionate heart but also a desire to bring glory to his country. Call him a middle school kid or a passionate one. But it's fair to say that Yu had a deep love for his country since childhood. Even as a child, she had always dreamed of growing up to bring glory to her country, promoting her nation's medical and martial arts. She'd become a powerful Pokémon trainer, standing on the world stage, battling powerful Pokémon and trainers from around the world, and winning glory for her nation. So, for some unknown reason, Yu felt a wave of anxiety and hesitation. She feared that she might bring shame to her country at tomorrow's exchange meeting. Yu's mind was racing, and the frown on his face deepened. So much so that he didn't even notice the tall, pretty figure appear behind him. He remained lost in his own world, lost in his thoughts. After an unknown amount of time, the pretty figure seemed tired of standing, or perhaps couldn't bear to see Yu frowning in deep thought. Her high heels made no sound on the snow as she took her first steps. She plopped down in the empty seat next to Yu, not immediately greeting him. Instead, she looked ahead. Pikachu, on the other hand, noticed someone suddenly beside him, looked up and saw it was Kona. Seeing Kona shushing at her, she dropped her head back down, closed her eyes, and began to doze. After a moment's silence, Kona seemed to have composed her words before speaking. Yu, why did you leave so early? Didn't you say you were tired and ready to go back to bed? Why are you here again? Are you unhappy or worried about something? Tell me and cheer me up. I can also give you some advice. Yu, however, acted as if she hadn't heard Kona's question, remaining lost in thought. Kona pursed her lips, not angry at Yu's lack of attention. With her pretty face tilted to the side, her beautiful eyes gazed silently at Yu. In an instant, the atmosphere in the field became quiet again. No one spoke, and there was no other sound around except the falling snowflakes. At the same time in the Oak Research Institute, two pretty figures looked at the starry night sky. They were actually having a conversation with each other. The exchange meeting will start tomorrow. Aren't we going to meet Yu? Well, I think, forget it. We should take advantage of this period of time to improve our strength in Pokémon. We should try to let him see a different side of us when we meet next time. Chapter 512 Dress Up. The next morning, perhaps because it was the start of the exchange meeting, the girls and the more sleep-in-loving boys all rose early, making a rare exception. As usual, in the Pokémon Center's backyard, diligent Pokémon could be seen diligently training. But today, there was one figure missing, the one who usually sat there, meditating or cultivating during Pokémon training. A sudden scream shattered the tranquility, startling the slumbering bird Pokémon, who fluttered their wings and flew everywhere. Yu, what are you wearing? It's so strange, Yulong Zenai's voice echoed with confusion and bewilderment. Then came Du's voice, what are you making so much noise so early in the morning? Don't you know others need to rest? You're so disrespectful. Yulong Zenai's exclamation immediately attracted countless attention. In the next instant, countless gazes were mesmerized by the mere fact that such a graceful young man existed. His white robe and black hair flowed freely, untied and untied, gently fluttering as he slowly emerged from the room, giving him the appearance of a god descending from the heavens. A faint radiance flowed from his skin, and his eyes shone with 1,000 glazed lights. His features were picturesque, so beautiful they seemed almost unreal. This appearance, This demeanor transcended all human beauty. Even an angel could not surpass his beauty in casual white robes. Such transcendental men and women, such transcendental beauty, were beyond words. And unlike the attire of the original ancient knights, Yu no longer carried his steel sword on his back today, but instead hung it at his waist. He clutched a folding fan, giving him the air of a young master from a noble family. The odd yellow Pikachu on his shoulder, far from marring his image, actually added a touch of approachability. He truly looked like a handsome, unrestrained young man from the clan, raising his cup and gazing at the sky, as bright as a jade tree in the wind. I always told you to read more, kid, but you wouldn't listen. Now you're illiterate, aren't you? You're always making a fuss, really bringing shame to our family. Yiyu's attire is unique to his country. And if I remember correctly, it should be that scholar? Or some gentleman? Yes, that's right, that. Du scratched his cheek awkwardly at the sidelong glance from his younger brother, but to avoid embarrassment in front of his family, he maintained a stubborn front. But a pleading look had already been cast towards Yu. Before Yu could even begin to speak, someone else intervened. Du Xianwang, you're talking about a Confucian scholar. Seeing this moment, it was as if a conversation was just beginning. Serena, who was speaking so eloquently, was now stunned, both those familiar with her and those unfamiliar. This Xiaoxu, is this still the Serena we know? When did she acquire such a deep understanding of Chinese culture? Look at how effortlessly she speaks. Is this still the Serena who usually only knows about fashion and cooking? Aya rubbed her eyes, as if only this could clear her mind. I don't know. Although I spent some time in China when I studied abroad, I didn't know this much. Xiaoxu was equally astonished. Only foreigners who have truly lived in China can truly understand the difficulty of learning Chinese culture. After witnessing this, Yu remained remarkably calm. After Serena finished recounting the knowledge she had gained about her life, Yu clapped his hands, as if approving of what she had said. Seeing her beloved actually agree with what she said, Serena's heart was filled with joy, pride, and a sense that all her efforts had paid off. Of course, Serena didn't tell anyone that she hadn't done well on her Pokémon exams. Besides studying fashion and food, she devoted all her remaining energy to studying Chinese culture. After all, love at first sight might be a myth, but it's not unheard of. It's safe to say that once you meet Yu, you'll be destined for love. She remembered when Yu first met her, he was dressed like an ancient knight, full of Chinese influences. His constant, detached demeanor and cool expression captivated the girl's heart. This was why, in her later years, Serena's fashion research tended to lean towards Chinese styles. But, having said that, Yu, why are you dressed like this? It looks so strange. Yulong's and I was still a little confused. Because I like it, I enjoy it. Yiyu's lips curled up slightly, as if he had returned to his usual sunny and playful self. At that moment, his eyes met Kona's, and they both smiled in tacit understanding. As if distracting himself, as if refocusing his mind, Yu teased the Pikachu perched on his shoulder. Meanwhile, in his mind, he seemed to be answering Yulong's and I's question. I've waited so long for this day. Finally, the day will come when I can show myself and truly achieve the glory I've always dreamed of. By the way, since everyone's going to the exchange meeting today, let's have breakfast early. I've specially prepared a few of my signature dishes. Xiaoxu smiled faintly and led the way to the dining room. Perhaps it was because today's exchange meeting was such a grand occasion. Everyone, girls and boys alike, were dressed beautifully and handsomely. After confirming that the suit, which was a bit bulky and bulging on him, was in good condition, Ziba cheered excitedly and followed him, bringing a group of people with him, to enjoy the morning delicacy. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 513 The Exchange Meeting begins. The Exchange Meeting is an international competition held every few years. Besides the random selection of the country and venue, the venue itself is also chosen. Once everything is finalized, the venue's decoration begins well in advance. Regardless of the size of the host city or the remoteness of the location, the chosen country will undoubtedly strive to ensure its success. After all, while the exchange meeting is considered a different, perhaps even a worldly, competition in the Pokémon world, it ultimately concerns a nation's reputation. Therefore, this year's exchange meeting will be held on a small snowy mountain in Fangsu Town, Kalos, an island nation. This mountain, like the town's name, is easily remembered, Fangsu Mountain. Fangsu Mountain is a renowned scenic spot in Fangsu Town. Its unique location offers sweeping views of the entire town, and the year-round snowfall creates a sense of being transported to fairyland. Furthermore, this place is also a renowned source of ice stones, resulting in the sight of numerous ice-type Pokémon everywhere, and even the occasional bird Pokémon, braving the bitter cold and falling snow to fly across the snow-capped mountains that stretch between them. This is precisely why Fangsu Mountain, unlike other snowy mountains, doesn't give off the same quiet and lifeless vibe. Instead, it exudes a vibrant energy. Although the exchange conference is an international event, as Jizin had previously explained to you, due to various factors, despite its international status, not many attend. After all, as the saying goes, this era ultimately belongs to Pokémon and trainers. While medicine may not be outdated, martial arts will eventually fade with the times. Indeed, with the regular exchange conferences, the subject of conversation is often Pokémon, such as how the original battles between bizarre individuals from various countries have gradually evolved into Pokémon battles. While the art of medicine, originally meant to heal illnesses and save lives, still survives, it hasn't spread as widely as martial arts. However, with a gradual change and arrival of the times, this aspect of medicine is no longer solely about people, but has also expanded to include Pokémon. Perhaps this has led to diverging philosophies. Some believe their skills are so exceptional that they shouldn't be eliminated. Every profession has its own specialization. For example, some rigid thinkers may be exceptionally skilled in medicine, but that's only with people. Their Pokémon-related beliefs may be deeply ingrained, making them unwilling to change. This results in a shortage of healers who possess the skills to treat both people and Pokémon. This is perhaps why the Joey family enjoys such high prestige on the island nation, so sought after wherever they go. After all, they have achieved a shared understanding of their art. While not entirely masterful, their expertise is more than sufficient. Due to various circumstances and the passage of time, the number of attendees at the exchange meeting dwindled. However, those who managed to attend were considered exceptional talents. The exchange, originally reserved for industry insiders, gradually became open to the public. Anyone who could make it here could find a place to sit and watch. At this moment, halfway up Fangsu Mountain, stood a simple building. The surrounding walls weren't made of reinforced concrete, but rather resembled something from Pokémon. Why? Because the walls were made of countless ice bricks. The area was the size of 4 football fields, with 4 gates each, east, west, south, and north. And like any other sports field, there were spectator stands on all sides. In the center, a platform, also carved from the same stone, served as the platform for the workers' exchange meeting. So, were there 2 areas? One for workers engaging in physical combat, the other for medical treatment. Although the exchange meeting hadn't begun yet, besides the staff, people and Pokémon could be seen glimpsing in the audience. While not everywhere, people of Asian, African, and Caucasian descent weren't visible, they were visible if one looked carefully. Various Pokémon, because they had good relationships with their trainers, didn't return their Pokéballs to the audience, instead following their owners. After all, the crowds were still quite small, so if the need arose, the smaller Pokémon trainers could hold them in their arms while they watched. People were gradually flocking to the exchange meeting venue, their diverse languages and attire adding a touch of color to the seemingly snow-capped Fangsu Mountain. Meanwhile, after finishing breakfast, Yu packed up, making sure he hadn't forgotten anything. Then, he and his group followed the address indicated on the invitation letter and arrived outside the exchange meeting venue. Looking at the castle, which resembled nothing but ice and snow, the girl's eyes sparkled with joy. Kona, the Ice Queen, was especially delighted. Even after seeing the castle made of ice and snow, Kona occasionally commented as she followed the group toward the intersection. Wow! This forum venue is amazing. It's absolutely beautiful, Yulong Zinai exclaimed in admiration. After all, everyone loves beauty. This applies not only to girls but also to boys and Pokémon. This is simply amazing. Without superb control of Pokémon's abilities, it's impossible to create such a structure. Shiba was naturally drawn in. Curious, despite knowing it was wrong, she couldn't help but gently place her hand on the ice, immediately drawing the above conclusions. Chapter 514 Significance. That's right, that's right. It seems the league organizers have really made a big splash this time. Du couldn't help but sigh. Hey, why do you say that? Xiaoxu was puzzled. That's because there are so few Ice-type Pokemon capable of reaching this level. You can practically count them on one hand. Kona smiled and answered first, as if he had just come back from his fascination with the Ice Rule building. Yes, Kona is right. To reach this level, the Pokemon might be inferior to Kona's Dragonite. But at least it won't be that far behind. Shiba completed the explanation. Serena seemed to have just realized it, gently patting her smooth forehead. How could I have forgotten that last part? Sister Kona is a true Ice King, a master of Ice-type Pokemon, no point in talking. Let's go in and take a look. I'm really looking forward to this so-called exchange meeting. I really want to meet the other people. Perhaps it was because of their kingly mentality, but at this moment, whether it was Shiba, Du, or Kona, they all exuded their cultivated majesty to the fullest. Kona, the only girl among the three, was especially eye-catching. She was already very beautiful, and with her pink lace dress, a furry coat draped over her shoulders, a crystal necklace around her neck, and long, wavy red hair cascading down her shoulders, she exuded the youthful and lively aura of a young girl, yet also exuded the noble and elegant demeanor of a queen. Especially with the ironclad clam at her side, she looked incredibly majestic, like a knight guarding the queen, a figure not to be underestimated. Her aura of the Ice Queen was perfectly captured, especially against a backdrop of the snow-covered mountains. Everything seemed so natural. Ah, isn't this you? What a coincidence. At this moment, several figures approached, one dressed as a Taoist priest, another as a monk, and both dressed identically to Yu. Amitabha. Yu, we meet again. Jizin, clad in a cassock, grinned, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. It's better to arrive early than to arrive early. It's truly an honor to meet Brother Yi again. Bei Gongming, dressed like Yu, was also handsome, though not as handsome as Yu. He also greeted her, his face filled with joy. This truly proved it. Fellow villagers meeting, tears welling in their eyes. This saying is incredibly useful at any time. Especially now, in such a special occasion, only when everyone remains united can they truly bring glory to their motherland. Therefore, the Chinese people, who deeply understand this truth, regardless of whether they are good or bad, will always be extremely sensible in such special times, temporarily putting aside personal grudges and uniting against the outside world. Perhaps this is the spirit of the Chinese nation, passed down for thousands of years. Yu has something to ask, but I'm not sure if I should ask it. Yulongzhenai seemed hesitant, as if he couldn't bring himself to speak. What? Just ask if you want to. Don't hold it in, it's not good if you get hurt later. After greeting Bei Gongming and Jinxin and letting them go first, Yu waited for the other women to arrive. Seeing Yulongzhenai's hesitation, he couldn't help but chuckle. Yes, that's right. Didn't you tell us before that this kind of communication is gradually changing with the times? From the original one that was mainly based on people like you, it has gradually changed to being mainly based on Pokemon. Then maybe it was easy to understand before. Because you individuals actually represent the country behind you, and therefore your clothing is to show the culture of your country. But now, it is no longer a martial arts battle. It's just a Pokemon battle, and trainers are not as popular as Pokemon. It is very rare that Yulongzhenai can say so much in one breath. After Yulongzhenai said this, the others also became curious. Air, who knew even less about Chinese culture, followed suit and asked curiously, yes. If it's compared to this kind of exchange meeting, then trainers just need to dress appropriately, right? As for the group just now, they were dressed like monks, right? And you, look at the people from other countries. Although their outfits are not uniform and there are all kinds of styles, their clothes are very normal. After the topic was aroused, the others also became very curious. They looked at Yu with inquiring eyes, hoping that he would give an answer. Yu also saw some foreigners entering the exchange venue and looked at those curious eyes. After pondering for a moment, Yu finally gave his answer. Actually, there aren't that many rules. It's just that this is more like a tacit understanding, a spirit. A spirit that is unique to our nation. We are both warriors and knights serve the country and the people. We have a sense of pride in our country, and the clothes we wear are all part of our national culture. This may not mean much to you, or to us. It's more of a spiritual sustenance or belief, What Yu said was the ideas that Zhao Kuang taught him since he was a child, which is why he was able to have such insights. And just after Yu finished speaking, before the people around him could recover from his words, a sudden round of applause broke out behind him. Shunsheng turned around and saw that the newcomer, before Yu could ask a question, was already speaking to himself. Yes, this brother is absolutely right. These clothes we wear may not have much use now, but they serve more to give us spiritual sustenance and faith. They also serve to remind us warriors of our love and loyalty to our country. The newcomer was a man about the same age as Ziba, dressed like a knight, with an ancient longsword slung across his back. A flying mantis followed him, like a proud swordsman, his whole body exuding a fierce aura. Chapter 515 Fangxing. This was a master. Not only was his own strength immense, but even his Pokémon's combat power was likely quite high. This was Yu's first impression of the suddenly appearing stranger. The fierce aura emanating from that scyther alone was enough to make Yu wary. As for the king-level beings like Kona and Du, they simply glanced at him and passed on without comment. After all, they were the undisputed strongest in their respective regions. No matter how powerful that scyther was, it couldn't possibly surpass the champion level. At most, it was a king or a quasi-champion. It was that man who made them wary. Because none of them would flinch in a Pokémon battle. However, when it came to their own strength, aside from Shiba, who had proven himself to be a king of fighting, the others were, to say the least, powerless. Yet, facing warriors like Yu, they were instantly defeated. Even at their level, they had their own Pokémon as bodyguards, but there was always the possibility of a mishap. And Shabana, a warrior-level being, could immediately sense the aura emanating from this man. Although his aura was very restrained, it was still more or less perceptible. Oh my! Another Grandmaster. In fact, he's even on par with Yu and me. As a fighting king, his combat prowess is naturally beyond words. Besides Yu, he's a battle fanatic, both in his own battles and with his Pokémon. Seeing the approaching man, kindness gradually grew in his eyes. However, once he realized he had no ill intentions, the fighting spirit faded. Hello, brother. My name is Fangxing. I don't mean to bother you, but after hearing what you said, I wanted to make friends with a young man like you. Fangxing was completely direct, without the slightest bit of pretense. He stated his purpose directly and without reservation, his eyes gleaming with sincerity, without a trace of falsehood. Hello. My name is Yu, and this is my partner, Pichu. As the saying goes, don't hit someone who smiles. Especially since they were in a foreign land, seeing a compatriot again, Yu certainly wouldn't be so cold as to refuse his friendship. Moreover, Yu could tell that this man named Fangxing was no ordinary person. He possessed the strength of a 5th-level Grandmaster. However, perhaps for some reason, Yu only introduced his own Pikachu and didn't introduce Kona, Serena, or the others. Oh, Yu, from what you just said, are you here for the exchange meeting as well? Fangxing didn't seem to care at all. After all he cared about was this interesting-looking young man. Well, what a rare event. It would be a shame to just witness it. Only by experiencing it firsthand can the trip be truly worthwhile. Yu smiled and extended his hand to shake Fangxing's, though his gaze flickered back and forth between him and Scyther. Fangxing noticed Yu's gaze, but he showed no sign of anger. Instead, he laughed heartily. Haha, by the way, this is my partner, Scyther. You're strong, and Scyther is strong too. If the timing wasn't right, I'd really like to fight you. Yu's face was filled with seriousness, and the aura he exuded was completely inconsistent with his current scholarly demeanor. Me too. If the conditions weren't right, I'd really like to fight too. Okay, clearly another battle fanatic. Alright, since we're all here for the exchange meeting, let's go in together. Don't just stand around at the door. Yu felt as if he had found himself. And he wanted to chat a little more. But after Serena's reminder, he had to change his original words. Well, it's getting late. The exchange meeting will start at 9 o'clock sharp and end at 10 o'clock in the evening, lasting only one day. Fangxing announced the time of the exchange meeting, then raised his hand to check his watch and the international contestants who continued to enter. Yu was very happy after receiving Fangxing's confirmation. After all, although he was attending the exchange meeting, there were many rules and regulations that were only handled by Yiking. Now that he had it, Fangxing's free consultation would save him a lot of trouble. Moreover, through this brief chat, Yu also found that his personality was very similar to his own, so he was very willing to chat with him. In that case, Sister Kona, you can take them in first. As contestants, we should first look up the rules and understand the situation. We'll see you at the venue then, okay? Be careful. If you encounter any problems, just tell us. We can still help in some way. After watching Serena and her group enter the venue, Yu also walked towards the other side of the venue under Feng Xing's guidance. Wow, is this the legendary exchange meeting? It doesn't look like anything special. Isn't it just a building carved out of ice? Why all the fuss? I can only say that the people in the current alliance are really not doing their job properly. It's indeed quite ostentatious. And they're putting so much effort into such trivial things. If they put more effort into other things, we might really have a hard time. At this moment, on the other side of the ice sculpture exchange venue, two people clad in black robes that covered their entire bodies looked coldly at the bustling scene through the slits in their robes. Perhaps because it was an exchange meeting today, people from different countries had their own unique costumes. Therefore, the two black-robed figures didn't stand out so much in the crowd. After all, there were so many bizarre decorations, and there were countless people with unique hobbies. But I really don't know what the boss is thinking. He actually sent us out to carry out this kind of mission. What's the point of such a thankless task? I don't know. Don't you understand the situation of our organization? We study all kinds of weird things. Chapter 516 Lineup. It makes me angry when I talk about this. We organized so many people, but in the end they only sent two of us to carry out the mission. What were they thinking? There's nothing we can do. The more capable you are, the more work you should do. It's your fault that you were more of a hindrance than a help. Coming to carry out this mission is already a light punishment. Do you want to be locked up in a small dark room? One of the men in black robes shuddered, as if he had thought of some bad experience. Okay. Stop talking nonsense and get on with the next operation. I want to finish quickly so I can get back to watching my cartoons. Okay, then. The next operation's codename is Big Bad Wolf Catches Little Llama. Why didn't I realize you were such a fool back then? Hey, what do you mean? I think the codename is great. So impressive? Yeah, if you could top up your IQ, you'd be even more impressive. Like a little pig flying into the sky. As time passed, even though the exchange meeting hadn't begun yet, the audience in the ice-sculptured auditorium kept filling up. It looked like it was almost completely packed. Even though the exchange meeting hadn't even begun, the atmosphere in the entire venue was at its peak, with no sign of cooling down. Laughter, chatter, all sorts of voices echoed. The scene was bustling with activity. People of 3 different skin colors were everywhere, speaking different languages. However, after seeing this scene, Yu was completely devastated. There was no way around it. Although this was a world centered around Pokémon, it also had Pokémon leagues made up of various nations. Therefore, there were different languages. And what Yu meant by languages were only 2, Chinese, of course, and Japanese. As a native Chinese, while he wasn't completely fluent in Chinese, he was only somewhat limited. After all, even in the Pokémon world, Chinese culture was still profound and extensive. As for Japanese, Yu had only learned it a few years ago when he came to live with Professor Oak. Normally, it was only enough for basic communication. But then came the problem. This was an international exchange. Most of the conversation would probably be in English. After all, it was a universal language. But Yu was a complete idiot in English. He couldn't even learn it. At best, he could only say a few words. Hello, yes. Feeling a little guilty, he glanced at Feng Xing beside him. Seeing his confident demeanor, Yu felt a sudden sense of panic. What should I do? What should I do? I suddenly felt so illiterate. If I had to go on stage and communicate, I'd be embarrassed. Ugh. This is so annoying. This is a world and era dominated by easy Pokémon. Why can't we just communicate in Chinese? Why do we have to learn all that nonsense? Isn't this just hindering us, the great Pokémon trainers? Yu complained internally, but he couldn't show it. He had to maintain a warm smile. As they walked, he chatted with Feng Xing beside him. What's wrong? Why do you always take it so seriously? Is there something wrong with me? At this moment, Feng Xing noticed Yu's occasional glances at him and touched his cheek, asking curiously. Meanwhile, he silently wondered, what's wrong with Yu? Why is he staring at me? Is he completely stunned by my handsomeness? No, no, Yu said, now flustered, waving his hands repeatedly. Let's go, then. For those of us attending the exchange, the officials will reserve rest areas for us, divided by country. So, let's take advantage of this rare opportunity to meet some young heroes, Feng Xing explained, then led Scyther, Yu, and Pikachu towards the Chinese rest area. Yu's interest peaked, temporarily putting aside his language concerns. By the way, I still don't know what the rules of this exchange are. Feng Xing, can you tell me? Yu suddenly seemed to remember something and hurriedly called out to Feng Xing again. The rules of the exchange? I'm actually a little unclear on that. After all, with the changing times, the rules change with each exchange. Feng Xing was stunned for a moment, then scratched his head sheepishly, then shared his information with Yu without reservation. Following Feng Xing, Yu and the others soon arrived at the Chinese rest area. However, the rest area, reserved exclusively for the Chinese camp, was already filled with many people. Besides the group of people Yu had seen with Jingxin at the entrance to the venue, there were others. A variety of attire, representing the Chinese martial arts world, was present for just a moment. Yu felt a sudden surge of familiarity. After all, encountering the unique atmosphere of one's homeland in a foreign land and meeting fellow countrymen was a truly joyful experience. However, despite his joy, Yu didn't approach anyone else to greet them. After saying hello to Feng Xing, he found a quiet corner with Pikachu and sat down alone. He began to adjust his composure. After all, he still didn't know what he would face. Furthermore, since today was such a crucial moment, Yu didn't hold back. The Pokémon he brought with him were his most powerful: Pikachu, Suicune, Gyarados, Charmeleon, Crawl, and Blaziken. With the exception of Blaziken, which was still at the elite level, the others had already reached the Quasi-King level. There were even one or two that were practically approaching the elite level. Even Rocket, the only elite level Pokémon, had already reached the pinnacle of the elite level, just a fraction of a second away from breaking through to the Quasi-Elite level. Therefore, Yu's lineup today was truly exceptional. Thanks to Kona, after the battle, all the Pokémon that participated had improved to varying degrees. Furthermore, there was still a half-day of champion-level Pokémon instruction to follow. Compared to before the battle with Kona, they were significantly stronger. Chapter 517 Qualifications. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Serena and Kona's group also found seats in the audience area. It's worth mentioning that, perhaps to avoid being looked down upon by people from other countries, the audience area within the exchange venue is carved entirely by mercenaries, and a cloth was placed on top to prevent anyone from getting cold. Furthermore, the unique location and climate of Fangzhou town meant that the ice wouldn't melt quickly. It should last at least 2 or 3 days. Wow, so beautiful, so magical. Sitting on the ice chair, Yulong's and I couldn't help but sigh in delight. Since it was summer, it didn't feel particularly cold, but rather refreshing. Perhaps influenced by Yu, Serena and the others each released their own starter Pokémon, each cradling them in their arms as if they had just finished reporting. Of course, due to the larger size of the long-tailed fox, it had to sit on a separate chair. Yet, I don't know when the league became so proactive. If they'd focused all that effort on improving their strength, perhaps they wouldn't be in this current state of weakness. Hiba couldn't help but sigh, his words dripping with sarcasm. As much as I hate to admit it, I have to admit it. The league is really getting weaker and weaker. I can't imagine what the league will be like when we all retire. While collectively referred to as the Pokémon League, there are divisions within each country, and within each country, there are regional divisions. On the international stage, the Island Nations Pokémon League would rank among the top 16. However, in recent years, as other countries have focused on cultivating their own Pokémon trainers, the Island Nations Pokémon League has gradually fallen behind. This isn't to say that the trainers in the Island Nations Pokémon League aren't strong, it's simply that there's no comparison. Forget it, why are you thinking so much? Those are not what we can consider right now. You should just focus on the next exchange meeting. Kona interrupted the conversation between Shiba and Du. Sitting on a chair carved entirely from ice, although it was just the same chair, Kona had to admit that it really matched her temperament. Even if it was just a common ice chair. After she sat on it, the aura of a queen was revealed. And with just these words, Du and Shiba immediately quieted down. Seeing this scene, Kona smiled slightly, And her smile was like the sunshine after the snow, making people feel warm. This exchange meeting is quite interesting. While it doesn't bring together the strongest young talent from every country, there are many formidable young people here. Let's first examine the differences between them, so we can analyze future trends. Kona's expression was extremely serious. After all, this was ultimately a matter concerning his own country, not to mention that he was a Pokemon hunter in the Pokemon League. Therefore, facing this exchange meeting, which offered a glimpse into the strength of trainers from other countries, they were not the least bit slack. I suddenly envy you. Being able to compete and battle with Pokemon trainers from other countries is a truly rare opportunity. Yulong Zenai's tone was tinged with envy. The so-called rest area, in particular, was located in the center of the venue, with several tents erected near the audience seats, acting as a national base. Therefore, everyone who would be attending the exchange meeting was fully present to the audience. As he scanned the Pokemon following those people, a fighting spirit flared in Nobuaya Marayu's eyes. How do? This kid really is just like you. Hearing Nobuaya Marayu's words, and especially seeing his kind eyes, Shiba let out a hearty laugh, and couldn't help but pat Du's shoulder with his broad hand. Haha, Nobuaya will have a chance. But before that, you have to become stronger, otherwise, forget it. Du was delighted, happy for his brother's confidence. So, what level do I have to reach to challenge them? Nobuaya Marayu asked, seeming eager to achieve the strength Du had described. Well, do you really want to know? Yes, well, just tell me. Meeting his brother's determined gaze, Du couldn't help but curl his lips. It's simple. As long as you can win a regional championship, you'll be fine. At the very least, third place will be fine. Du Feng spoke nonchalantly, as if a regional championship was worthless, as if it were within his grasp. And yet, that was indeed the case. After all, during Du's time, the Pokemon trainers and Pokemon participating in the Kanto League's Pokemon tournament were far more formidable than they are today. Trainers who made it to the quarterfinals or semifinals would have been a contender for the championship in that era. Moreover, Du was now countless times more powerful than he was then. Therefore, he spoke these words with complete confidence. However, compared to Du's nonchalant expression, Yulong Zenai's heart was practically pounding. A regional championship, and at the very least, third place? That was something he couldn't even imagine at the moment. Although Yulong Zenai was extremely confident in the strength of his Pokemon, that was just that. But he wasn't so inflated that he thought he was invincible. In fact, before he met Yulong Zenai was still fearless and thought he was very powerful. But after meeting after fighting again and again, Yulong Zenai felt like he had been severely taught a lesson. Even who completely suppressed him in strength, had his share of defeats against others, let alone his own. Chapter 518 Rules. What? Don't you have confidence in yourself? No information about your Pokemon? Du's smile widened as he watched Yulong Zenai, clutching his chest with his hands, his lips twitching. No, I have confidence in myself. I also have confidence in the Tyrannosaurus Rex and the others. I will definitely strive to catch up with and I will definitely defeat him. Yulong Zenai's tone was filled with unprecedented determination. He looked at who was sitting in the contestants' tent, resting with his eyes closed, his eyes filled with fighting spirit. Yulong Zenai didn't directly answer Du's question, but instead insisted on catching up with Yu's strength at that moment was completely enough to suppress him. Yet, even with such a person, Yulong Zenai openly stated that he would surpass him. The implication was self-evident. As if sensing something, Yu, who was resting in the contestant's tent, slowly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of his feeling. With his sharp eyes, he immediately spotted the presence of Yulong Zenai, Serena, and the others. Seeing Yulong Zenai staring intently at him, Yu even raised his hand and waved in their direction. Yu, why are you sitting here alone? Why don't you go talk to someone else and get to know them? At this moment, Bei Guangming approached. He was quite impolite, plopped down next to Yu, glanced at the direction Yu had waved, and then looked away. Well, forget it. I prefer being alone. I'm used to being alone, Yu answered without hesitation. But it was this thoughtless response that made Bei Guangming's mouth twitch. What do you mean by being alone? When I met you before, you were accompanied by 3 lovely girls. And what about that mature older sister I saw the night before? It seems Yu is only interested in young and beautiful girls. But this result immediately hurt Bei Guangming even more. Although he was not a girl, he could be considered a young hero. Could it be that he was not as good as a girl? Wu looking at Bi Gongming, who first showed an expression that everyone understood, and then a sad face. Yu felt puzzled. He really didn't know the rich thoughts in Bi Gongming's mind. If he knew, he probably wouldn't know what he would feel. Bi Gongming, what do you want to talk to me about? Seeing that Bi Gongming seemed to have fallen into silence, Yu took the lead in speaking to break the silence. In fact, just as Yu said, he was really not good at interacting with others. After all, after the initial incident, his heart could be regarded as a semi-closed state. Of course, if it is like Serena and Kona, the situation is a little different. After all, there is already a foundation of feelings. In addition, they have been through hardships together, so Yu opened his heart to them without reservation. In front of them and other acquaintances, he is no longer the Yu who is so calm that people feel he has no emotions and dare not get close to him. Instead, he is the one who can cry and laugh, and express his emotions. The foodie, the fighting maniac, the most real Yu. In a word, Yu's current friends are all those he recognizes. They know each other well and can share hardships together. As for asking him to meet more people, he really has no interest in it. After all, he is a fighting maniac. How can he have the free time? Instead of having that time, it would be better to fight a few more battles. Wouldn't it be more enjoyable? Oh, okay. Since you like to be alone, I can't force you. Bi Gongming came back to his senses at this time, but he changed the subject awkwardly because of his distraction just now. I came to see you because I just received the notice. It's about the rules for the upcoming exchange meeting. Yeah, and then what? Then, there's going to be a physical fight followed by a medical fight. As for the physical fight rules, they're actually quite simple. It's a 3-on-3 Pokemon battle. They say it's to keep up with the times. So, the exchange meeting uses a physical fight selection process, with an elimination system. The combined number of participants from each country is 128, so there's a round of 64, a round of 32, a round of 16, a round of 8, and a semi-final. And then there's the finals. The opponents assigned will only be from other countries, not from the same country. The final result will be based on a point system based on the top 16. First place gets 16 points, second place gets 15 points, and so on. Yu listened attentively. Even Pichu, perched on his shoulder, did the same, a serious look on his adorable face. After Bi Gongming explained the rules for the upcoming exchange meeting, Yu finally asked the question that had been on his mind. Why do I always feel that the fighting system of this exchange meeting is so similar to the conference system held by the regional Pokemon League? I feel that this exchange meeting is too casual, right? Yu is a little disappointed now. After all, this exchange meeting seems to be completely different from what he imagined. Bi Gongming was also stunned by Yu's question. He also knew about the system of the Pokemon League competitions in various regions, so he was really confused by the question for a while. However, after thinking hard for a long time, Bi Gongming finally forced himself to come up with a reason that was not a reason. After all, Yu's strength is obvious to all. Although he is not afraid that he will withdraw from the competition in a fit of anger. But he can't help but worry that something unexpected will happen at that time. The face that will be lost is not just for them, but also for the existence of their unified representative. How can they be the same? An exchange meeting is an exchange meeting. The Pokemon League tournament is the Pokemon League tournament. Besides, the two are completely on the same level, okay? An exchange meeting is international, while the Pokemon League tournament is only national. The opponents encountered at the exchange meeting are stronger, okay? Although there won't be too many, the younger generation of each country will come to participate. The opponents they face are also stronger, okay? And if this wasn't because of the changes in the times, then the opponents they face would be even more terrifying. Champion-level Pokemon are everywhere, and quasi-champion-level Pokemon are as numerous as dogs. Chapter 519 The battle begins. Champion-level Pokemon are everywhere, and quasi-champion-level Pokemon are as numerous as dogs. Bi Gongming's words completely stunned Yu, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. What Bi Gongming said seemed to make sense. How could he forget? This exchange meeting was originally a competition held by each country to compete for a face. It's just that with the changes in the times, coupled with the inadaptability of some of the older generation, and the rise of the new generation, in the end, The original face-saving conference has become a conference for the younger generation to communicate and show off their strength. Okay, Yu, I won't bother you to adjust. I hope you can achieve good results in the next battle. Bi Gongming also got up and left at this time. After all, the next exchange meeting was about to begin. He also had to make adjustments to his Pokemon lineup in Pokemon. As time passed, this exchange meeting officially started on time. It seems the league is taking this exchange meeting very seriously. They even invited AG, the host of the famous Pokemon All Around, to come. Watching from the audience, Ziba exclaimed in surprise at the man operating the Pokemon battle display in the center of the arena. AG, the host, continued to introduce the event. Next up, we'll have a battle. The rules are very simple. Each player can only send out 3 Pokemon. When one team's Pokemon are all incapacitated, the other team wins. The 3 Pokemon don't have to be fixed, but they must be the 6 Pokemon you currently have with you. Pokemon that have been incapacitated will not be fielded. If any players don't have 6 Pokemon or need to exchange Pokemon, we have dedicated personnel to transfer their Pokemon. The battles will be based on a promotion system. Aside from the break after victory, there will be no rest periods for trainers or Pokemon. AG then proceeded to explain the exchange meeting in more detail. Whether it was the international participants about to attend the exchange, or the audience, everyone was listening attentively to the rules. What kind of rules are these? These rules sound so strange. The rest time for Pokemon and trainers is so short. After hearing the rules, both the audience and the attendees engaged in a lively discussion with their companions. As the lowest level Pokemon trainer and the least powerful of the group, Nobuno Mariu was also somewhat bewildered after hearing the rules. Of course, this didn't include Serena and the other 3 girls. What kind of rules are these? This, Nobuno Mariu gasped. He was also somewhat relieved that he hadn't attended this so-called exchange. Just hearing the rules was perverse enough. Of course, Nobuno Mariu's outburst was merely a reflection of the generally less powerful individuals at the exchange. The 3 top players sitting next to him formed a stark contrast to him. In contrast to Yulong Zenai's somewhat out-of-control demeanor, Ziba appeared intrigued, even eager to fight. The rules of this exchange competition are quite interesting. They're somewhat similar to those defending matches. Yes, they do feel similar. But I suspect the original rules established by the Alliance were similar to those defending matches. But perhaps due to a completely unfeasible solution, they became the current rules. Du looked thoughtful. As the remaining top player among the 3, Kono did not join in the conversation. He turned a concerned gaze toward Yu, who was currently in the Huaxia rest area, and muttered to himself, indeed, these rules are quite complex. At least for you right now, they're still quite challenging. Yu, what will you do next? Afterwards, after AG announced the rules, the competition did not begin. Instead, he very considerately allowed 10 minutes for those who were not fully prepared to adjust. Perhaps out of caution, or perhaps for some other reason? Yu ignored the other's surprised looks and simply released all of his Pokemon, repeatedly checking their status. The 10-minute adjustment period passed quickly. As each trainer adjusted their status, a large electronic display screen at the exchange meeting displayed the roster for the top 64 matches for the 128 players. At this moment, the center of the exchange venue, once covered in ice, began to gradually separate. Standard, official battlefields were marked out. Upon closer inspection, there were 10 as the fields were divided. 10 referees gradually entered from outside, each assigned to a battlefield. And because there were 10 battlefields, the subsequent process was much more efficient. Coincidentally, Yu, Fengxing, and Jingxin were among the first to take the field. Yu's opponent in the top 64 was a young black man. His nationality, displayed on the screen, indicated the United States. Perhaps because the exchange was a significant event, and the reputation of each country was at stake, it was rare. Upon entering the arena, neither side immediately sent out their Pokemon to battle. Instead, they exchanged friendly greetings, and Yu's performance further showcased China's ethos of courtesy. It was simply that neither side understood the other's language. The referee was quite courteous. After all, those who qualify as referees must have excellent judgment. After the 2 players exchanged friendly greetings, he pressed the remote control and began selecting the battle arena. The pointer stopped, pointing to the water arena. With the referee's command, the battle between the 2 sides was about to begin. Water arena? Then it's you, Crawler, Water arena. That's my home turf. Go ahead, Ironclad. Let's show them our strength. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 520 First Blood. Giant Crab, use Bubble Beam, Scutella, use Water Gun. Both sides fielded water-type Pokémon, and the aquatic battle was like a sea of fish and dragons. From the very beginning, both sides were testing each other with their signature moves. Giant Crab used Mudshot, a move learned after Giant Crab evolved into Giant Crab, was now being used in combat for the first time. Scutella used Shell Retraction. Rather than engaging head-on, Scutella opted for a more conservative defense, retreating into its shell. The shells on either side of its body folded together, creating a powerful armor. The barrage of mud shots had no effect on Scutella, who was completely in shell mode. Not even a mark was left on its hard shell, let alone any damage. Wow, that shell is pretty hard. Almost as tough as Blastoise's, Yu exclaimed in amazement, looking rather envious at its defensive power. Unaware of what the Chinese youth was saying, the country trainer had no interest in understanding, instead barking orders at his shellfish. Time for our counterattack. Shellfish, use Ice Spike. Crocodile, use Hard. This time, it was Yu's turn to command Crocodile to use defensive skills. Under Yu's influence as a warrior, his Pokémon all focused on physical training. Their physiques were incredibly strong, practically any Pokémon with a modicum of strength, save for the fragile ones. And even for the fragile ones, if compared to other Pokémon with more common skins, Yu's side still held the advantage. A metallic sheen shone on Crocodile's surface, and the icy cones that struck it left no mark. Damn! Why is this Squidward's defense so high? Seeing his attacks completely ineffective, the American trainer cursed, seeming a bit angry. Don't give up, Squidward. Use the Shell Blade, Iron Armor. Looking at Squidward's back, two blades suddenly flashed on the raised surface of its skin. Even if Yu didn't understand what he was saying, he knew what Squidward was using. Therefore, he reacted quickly and gave the order, looking for a close combat? Who's afraid of whom? Come on, the collision of flesh and flesh is what makes our blood boil. Squidward, use the Crab Punch. Bang! 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 The Crab Punch and the Shell Blade clashed with a crisp sound. Although after evolving into Squidward, Squidward's Crab Punch no longer swung with both fists, but now swung with its front. However, the evolved Grim Reaper's massive claws lacked sufficient weight, and its crab fist was like swinging a massive hammer. Facing the relentless, spinning shell knife, the Grim Reaper didn't seem at a disadvantage. Instead, it seemed to have the upper hand. The massive crab swung its full weight, its powerful attacks meeting the shell knife's swift movements. A surge of force accompanied the powerful blows, and the shell knife, previously lashing out like a torrential downpour, paused for a moment. Despite this brief pause, the Grim Reaper had gained the upper hand, hammering down the metal clam. Its massive claws seemed weightless, their attacks swung at a frequency slightly higher than the shell knife's. It seemed that in the pit stop, Metal Clam was no match for the Grim Reaper, and was on the verge of being crushed. The country trainer had no choice but to once again order the shell defense. Facing the turtle-like shell that completely protected its interior, Yu didn't feel the slightest bit of a headache. Instead, Shadow felt a surge of excitement. That's right, excitement. Yu wasn't afraid of you not moving, but rather of you moving. Due to the peculiarities of country's body, once country entered the shell defense, it was completely immobilized, practically a free punching bag. Don't be shy, Krusty, keep using your Crab Punch. This is a free punching bag, so make sure you hit it hard. Yu smirked, and Krusty smiled happily. Seemingly overly excited, Krusty waved its Crab Punch relentlessly, foaming at the mouth with excitement. By the time the country trainer realized what was happening, it was too late. He could only watch helplessly as his own cheetah was completely depleted of its combat capability by the terrifying punches of the crab crawl. Yu thus successfully secured the first blood, the first kill of the day. Fuck, I really underestimated you, he spat viciously and retracted his cheetah. The trainer from Country M did not hesitate at all and sent out the next Pokemon. Come out. Frog. Teach him a lesson and beat the shit out of him. Oh, Another water Pokemon? It seems that the guy on the opposite side should be a water-type trainer. Yu looked at the next frog and expressed his guess. Frog uses water cannon. Without further ado, the trainer from Country M immediately unleashed his ultimate move right from the start. Of course, a water cannon must be countered with a water cannon. Giant Claw Crab, use your water cannon. The two water cannons clashed, and after a brief stalemate, the balance quickly tilted. Though slow, the Giant Claw Crab's water cannons were already overwhelming, pushing towards the frog's water cannons. What? The opponent's water cannons are so powerful. Frog, don't give up. Use your most powerful water cannon. They've actually increased the power. In that case, Giant Claw Crab, show them the strength you've built these days. Use your most powerful water cannon. Bang! The two water cannons collided, and a loud explosion echoed. A huge splash of water formed in the center of the water battlefield. Chapter 521 Promotion. As the two water cannons collided, a massive wave erupted in the center of the water battle arena. As the wave receded, the scene within gradually became clearer. Scrab was intact, still floating on the water. While Frogger was also afloat, its mosquito repellent-coated belly was facing upward, and its eyes had become mosquito repellent. Frogger was completely incapacitated. Holy crap, the American trainer cursed instinctively upon seeing this. His cheeks burned. He had just claimed that the water battle arena was his home turf, and yet, in a flash, his side had been eliminated. Two Pokemon. And judging by the opposing trainer and Pokemon's expressions, it looked as if he hadn't caused them any trouble at all. The American trainer was furious, feeling completely humiliated at that moment. Even knowing they couldn't speak the same language, he couldn't stop his wild thoughts. After all, maybe the Chinese trainer on the other side didn't understand what he was saying. But the referee on his side certainly did. After all, the prerequisite for becoming an official referee was to be fluent in at least 3 languages. I wasn't planning on using it again, but if I don't, I'm afraid I'll be eliminated next time. Being eliminated is a small risk, but losing face is a big one, the American trainer muttered to himself as he pulled a Pokeball from his waist. Then, without hesitation, he tossed a Pokeball into the arena. A sturdy crayfish appeared in the water battle arena, its upper body floating on the surface, facing the crab from a distance. Crayfish, let's turn the tables. Use scissor. Is it crayfish that's being sent out this time? After taking out the Pokemon guide and looking at the crayfish's profile, you had a rough idea of how to respond. Giant Crab uses Crab Punch, facing a new Pokemon, and without understanding the situation, you didn't resort to probing as usual this time, instead engaging directly in a head-on confrontation. Bang, 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 the sound of collisions echoed continuously, with both crab and shrimp claws swinging back and forth. Although Giant Crab only had one claw, it relied on its immense power to deliver a constant flow of power. Facing the two-handed shrimp claws, it didn't seem to be at a disadvantage at all. In fact, due to Giant Crab's relentless and frantic use of its Crab Punch, the Iron Claw was already at a disadvantage from the very beginning of the exchange. What the hell are these freaks I'm up against? Back in my home country, I'd have made it to the top 32 of the league tournament. But looking at this situation, I'm going to be wiped out, right? And with just one Scrunchier. Have Scrunchiers become so powerful these days, capable of single-handedly taking on 3? The trainer from Country M roared furiously inwardly, especially when he saw Scrunchier blast his crayfish into the water with a single hammer blow. His mouth twitched, and his eyelids twitched. Fortunately, the crayfish didn't lose its combat capability immediately after the blast. That was his only consolation. Crayfish, use Bubble Beam. Scrunchier, use Water Gun. As both sides unleashed their skills, the originally close quarters fight instantly devolved into a stalemate. If I can't fight, can't I just dodge? The trainer from Country M thought viciously. Since his Pokemon couldn't match the others in close combat, he might as well just go for a ranged exchange of attacks. He simply couldn't believe his crayfish couldn't defeat the opponent in a battle of ranged skills. After all, his crayfish was his second-ranked Pokemon. As for why he didn't send out his number 1 Pokemon, the teenager was still hoping for a lucky break, believing that using only his second-ranked Pokemon would defeat his opponent's plot, preserving a small advantage for the upcoming promotion battle. But dreams are always good, reality is always cruel, and it came so unexpectedly. Just when the American trainer was confident that his crayfish could turn the tide, The next scene made him question his life completely. The crabberdo abandoned the water gun tug-of-war with the crayfish and instead appeared ready to abandon defense and attack with all his might. Facing a barrage of foam beams, the crabbert swung its massive claws and unleashed a crab punch. The giant crab claws immediately shielded the giant crab behind them, and the ensuing plot unfolded like a tank, sweeping across the water arena. The massive crab claws, wielding the crab punch, acted like a shield, charging recklessly under the horrified gaze of the Ironclaw. Bang! The sound of bangs echoed continuously. Perhaps realizing it couldn't withstand the onslaught of the crab punches, the Ironclaw ducked into the water. But before it could even begin to cheer itself up or even think of hoping for a lucky break, the Ironclaw surfaced, its eyes clearly shrouded in blood. Needless to say, it had lost its fighting ability. Upon witnessing this, without waiting for anyone else to react, the referee announced Yu's victory, securing his spot in the round of 32. After the battle, perhaps due to language barrier, Yu simply nodded calmly to the trainer from the opposing country and said nothing more. He went straight back to the rest area represented by his country. At the same time, not long after Yu's battle ended, the winners of several other battles were quickly decided. Metal Tyrannosaurus lost its ability to fight, and Heracris won. Feng Xing has qualified for the next 32 qualifying matches, Shell Ninja lost its ability to fight, and Commander/won. Ben Rosen has qualified for the next 32 qualifying matches, Twin-Tailed Blade lost its ability to fight, and Inferno won. Vigilance has qualified for the next 32 qualifying matches. Shortly after Yu's battle ended, the promotion lists of the trainers who won each battle were announced one by one. Chapter 522 Top 32. Yu, I didn't expect you to finish the battle so early. After the battle, Jingxin and Fang Xing arrived together. After all, they were from the same faction and friends, and they had entered the battle at the same time, so it was important for a fellow Taoist to come and offer their condolences. Yet, I heard you all advanced. Keep up the good work next time. Yu nodded. He was currently tending to his crab. While the rules only allowed a short break after the battle, an incapacitated Pokémon couldn't be fielded again, there was no mention of not giving his Pokémon some physical therapy. This could be considered an oversight on the part of the tournament, as there weren't many people like Yu who understood the special healing techniques of Pokémon. As the saying goes, everyone's energy is limited. In this world dominated by Pokémon and humans, there's more than just the Pokémon trainer profession, there are many other professions. It's worth mentioning, however, that Yu's idea was truly brilliant. If this had happened elsewhere, he might have exploited the tournament's loophole. But this was an exchange event. It involved both medical and martial arts competitions. While Yu and his group possessed dual abilities, they weren't rare, but they were not uncommon. At least 3 or 4 represented each country. This could be considered intentional by the tournament officials. After all, under the rules, even if the Pokémon fighting each other maintained their combat capabilities, the damage incurred wouldn't be easily recovered. Furthermore, after one battle, the next battle didn't matter whether the Pokémon had been damaged in the previous one. Any Pokémon sent out occupied a spot. Therefore, this could be considered a different kind of medical and martial arts competition. Ultimately, these weren't fights for personal honor, but mostly for the country they represented. This directly resulted in those with dual abilities being relatively well off. On the other hand, those without dual abilities, those who were skilled in medicine but not proficient in Pokémon battles, faced difficulties. After failing to advance, none of them rushed to leave. Instead, they became doctors for their own Pokémon. This was a tacit agreement between the teams and the officials. After all, everyone relied on their own abilities. Medical skills varied, and so did the strength of the opponents. Well, then, you can take care of the giant claw crab first. We also need to adjust the care for the Pokémon we just fought. Feng Xing smiled, greeted Yu, and then left with Jingxin. It's worth noting that, perhaps because most of the Chinese participants were warriors, they all had some medical skills. At least injuries and bruises weren't a problem, and minor Pokémon battle issues could be resolved. And so, the battles at the exchange conference continued. Whether within each faction or those still battling on the battlefield, they were all busily engaged in their tasks. Of course, while it was just a discussion meeting, it felt like a competitive match, which was why the cheers from the spectators echoed. Time passed, and the discussion meeting continued unsteadily. Soon, the so-called top 64 rounds concluded. The list for the round of 32 was released, and the avatars of the 64 players from different countries appeared one by one on the screen. The round of 64 rounds had been incredibly intense, with each match resulting in losses from various factions. Let's just take Yiyu's Chinese faction for example. Bei Gongming, who Yiyu knew well, didn't even qualify for the promotion rounds. There were also several others, including Yiyu himself. Only 5 trainers from the Chinese faction successfully advanced to the round of 32. Of course, those who didn't make it didn't leave in disgrace or anger. While they were still somewhat unwilling to accept the outcome, at least they remained reasonable. Perhaps they weren't qualified to bring glory to their country, but they could at least serve as support personnel. With their limited medical skills, they could help care for Pokémon injured after a battle. By sheer coincidence, Yiyu, Jingxin, and Fangxing took the stage together. Yiyu's opponent this time was a trainer from country E named Xiaozhi. Yiyu had a good impression of Xiaozhi. After all, Xiaozhi and his Pokémon had shown considerable formidable skill in previous matches. They exchanged polite greetings. Afterward, the referee's manipulations shifted the battle to a rocky arena. Fortunately, Yiyu was given the first attack position. "I'll leave Crooked to you next," Xiaozhi dispatched Crooked, a fierce and ferocious creature. However, it was obvious that Crook still bore some scars and was even panting slightly. It was clearly the Pokémon he had sent out in the previous battle, having fought a tough battle. "If that's the case, I won't take advantage of you. Skaven decides on you again, since you're the one to attack first, I won't hold back." Skaven uses Crab Punch, Crocodile uses Burrow. In an instant, the entire rocky field was left with only Skaven's still dazed figure. Crocodile was nowhere to be seen. Skaven, having lost its target, reacted incredibly quickly and stopped dead in its tracks. Standing still, foaming from its mouth as usual, its eyes scanned the surroundings with vigilance, anticipating any sudden attack from its opponent. Skaven used Crab Punch directly on the ground. Bang bang. Without hesitation, the massive Crab Punch slammed into the ground. In an instant, the area surrounding the Crab Punch was covered in cracks like a spiderweb, visible to the naked eye. With the Yiyu's battlefield as the center, the entire rock battlefield was actually shaking slightly. Chapter 523 Nidoking. As the entire rock battleground shook slightly, the crocodile, previously hiding underground, poised for an attack, could not help but emerge. Instantly, it was completely exposed to the giant crab's attack. The giant crab, of course, would not miss such a good opportunity. Just as the crocodile emerged, a water blast followed. And then, caught off guard, the crocodile unsurprisingly struck. The crocodile, already weakened from the previous battle, though still capable of fighting, was further weakened. Just from the water blast alone, it was already gasping for breath. After all, water types are ultimately superior to ground types. Giant Crab seized the opportunity and used Bubble Beam. Yiyu intended for the giant crab to use some melee skills to end the battle. He had always thought that long-range attacks were too easy to dodge, but because the battleground was rocky, he couldn't move as nimbly as the crab had in the water battleground. Ultimately, he could only use Bubble Beam, but just as Yiyu had expected, long-range attacks were too easy to dodge. Even Crocodile, nearly exhausted at this moment, dodged just before the Bubble Beam struck him. Crocodile, use Hail. Suddenly, a violent wind swept through the rocky arena, whipping up sand that enveloped the two Pokémon. The hail also obscured Crab's vision. Caught in the hail, Crab endured the relentless damage while maintaining vigilance for any sudden attacks from Crocodile. As expected, the opposing Xiaozhi was a formidable figure. Seeing the opportunity, he decisively gave the order, "Crocodile, use your bite attack." "Damn, my vision is completely obscured. I have no idea where they'll attack from." It wasn't just Kingfisher on guard, Trainer Yiyu was equally vigilant, his gaze constantly scanning the battlefield. "We can't just sit there and wait for death when things get tough." Kingfisher keeps using hard bones to boost his defense. Since he couldn't find an opponent, Yiyu didn't intend to waste any more time. Rather than continue to be passive, he might as well take this opportunity to increase his defense. Upon hearing his trainer's order, Kingfisher acted decisively. He retracted his previously vigilant gaze and began unleashing hard bones. The light from his body flashed again and again, and with each flash, Kingfisher's body seemed to grow even harder. After using the third hard blast, the thug crocodile finally gave up. Amidst this whirling dust and sand, it suddenly rushed out from behind the giant claw crab, its sharp teeth gleaming with a cold gleam as it bit down on the giant claw crab without hesitation. The bite skill successfully hit the giant claw crab, but thanks to the 3 hard blast attacks, the giant claw crab's defense had been boosted to a new level. The damage caused to the giant claw crab by the blast was negligible. Instead, the giant claw crab reacted swiftly. The moment its body was bitten, its massive claws glowed white again, and it unleashed a crab fist directly at the thug crocodile. I just don't believe it. After being hit by this skill with a 100% hit rate and exceptional damage, the thug crocodile can still stand. Although Yu exuded confidence, he remained cautious before the final result was known. However, the reality proved that Yu had been overthinking things and was a bit overly cautious. After being hammered by a powerful crab punch, Croaker was already incapacitated. Thanks for your hard work, Croaker. Come back and get some rest. Despite this difficult start, Xiaoer showed no sign of discouragement. After returning Croaker to its Pokeball, he sent out his next Pokemon. I have to say there are quite a few formidable figures at this exchange. My third contestant is you, Nidoking. The next opponent is Nidoking. It seems the opposing trainer is a power-oriented one. You're a formidable opponent, Nidoking. Nidoking let out a deafening roar as soon as he appeared. Without waiting for his trainer's orders, he charged towards the crab like an oncoming armored vehicle. So fierce? He immediately launched a rampage. If that's the case, King Crab, let him calm down and use his bubble beams. A barrage of bubble beams pierced Nidoking's body, but Nidoking seemed oblivious, his frantic pace continuing. With each movement, the entire rocky battlefield shook. Closer and closer. The vibrations beneath King Crab grew more distinct, and the bubble beams it had used to block them were visibly crushed back. Bang, boom, a crash echoed, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. King Crab was already lying on the ground, his eyes swollen, completely incapable of fighting. Is it really that exaggerated? The power of this Nidoking is too terrifying, right? Forget about my own crab, which has had 3 hard defense upgrades. Yu couldn't help but take a breath. Sure enough, none of the people who can advance to the top 32 are simple characters. Since the opponent is strong enough, then it is obviously not a wise move to fight head-on. In this case, then it's decided on you. Yu secretly made up his mind. He threw the Pokeball exclusive to Rocket Sparrow into the field. It's your turn to play, Rocket Sparrow. Use charged flame attack. Obviously, Yu didn't intend to waste any more words. It was just that at the beginning, he greeted Rocket Sparrow with his strongest skill at the moment. Rocket. Chapter 524 Poisoning and Burns. As expected, upon entering the scene, Rocket Sparrow, leveraging its speed, unleashed a charged flame attack. Nidoking was caught off guard and was effectively struck. However, Yuyu's calculations were indeed sound, leveraging his speed advantage to secure victory or even engage the opponent. But Nidoking's inherent resistance to Rocket Sparrow's fire attribute was a formidable factor. Ground types were generally ineffective against flying types. However, Nidoking possessed exceptionally high defense and health. Even after taking Rocket Sparrow's charged flame attack, it remained unscathed. Instead, a faint purple aura lingered around Rocket Sparrow's Joshin. Upon witnessing this, Yuyu's expression darkened. He knew Rocket Sparrow was in the most formidable state of poisoning. Clearly, Rocket Sparrow's charged flame attack had triggered Nidoking's poison needle ability. However, Yuyu, so focused on his blaze, didn't notice that Nidoking was suddenly pulsing with sparks. Upon witnessing this, the opposing trainer, Xiaoer, wasn't much more pleased. From the intermittent flicker of pain on his Nidoking's face and the flames emanating from his body, it was clear that Nidoking was suffering from burns. Apparently, due to Blaze's charged flame attack, both Pokemon had come into physical contact. Perhaps by sheer luck, Nidoking had triggered Blaze's flame body ability, causing the burns. It was truly dramatic. Both Pokemon had barely begun the battle, yet both were in dire straits. Oh, ho, let's turn our attention to Yu and Xiaoer's battle. Both Pokemon are truly astonishing. One is burned, the other poisoned. At this moment, perhaps this battle had drawn the attention of referee Eiji, who had been focusing on another battle zone. Ignoring the clamor of discussion from the crowd outside, after Eiji's reminder, both Yu and Xiaoer noticed the poor condition of their Pokemon. This led to a smile, a mutual delight. Very good, since both are in poor condition, then the next test will be stamina. See whose Pokemon falls first. In that case, Rocket Sparrow shouldn't engage the opponent's Nidoking head-on. Instead, employed guerrilla harassment tactics, Yu decided to go all out, engaging in a protracted battle, wearing down the opposing Nidoking. Yu was extremely confident in his Pokémon's stamina, after all the training. His Pokémon's strength was focused on stamina, defense, and speed. And most importantly, Rocket Sparrow could leverage its speed advantage to fully utilize guerrilla warfare. With this in mind, Yu avoided any contact between Rocket Sparrow and Nidoking, instead using ranged abilities for harassment and attack. However, the ranged attacks Rocket had learned were ultimately limited in power, especially against a creature as tough and sturdy as Nidoking. They were barely scratching the surface. Even so, Nidoking was constantly annoyed by Rocket. Due to its enormous size and heft, Nidoking, who looked like a fly to Rocket, found it incredibly difficult to strike. Add to that the occasional burning effects, and Nidoking became even more uncomfortable and irritable. Of course, Rocket's poison was also constantly flaring up, causing his rapid, continuous attacks to stutter. Those who made it to the top 32 were no simple feats. While his own Pokémon seemed distraught, Xiaoer was remarkably calm. Perhaps it was as if he had no other options, or perhaps he was lost in thought. Xiaoer simply watched the battle unfold, and after Nidoking entered the burning state, he gave no further orders. Yu, on the other hand, saw that his opponent hadn't given him any orders. He wasn't going to be polite, and he wasn't going to fight him on equal terms. "You're a bastard if you don't take advantage of an opportunity." That was something his master had taught him since childhood, and it stayed with him. Therefore, Yu's saliva flowed freely, and Rocket Sparrow's abilities flowed with it, barking out orders after orders. And after Yu had issued countless orders, and Rocket Sparrow had launched countless attacks, Xiaoer suddenly spoke, the last word from the beginning. "Good opportunity. Nidoking, now is the time. Use Shadow Ball." The moment the order was delivered, Nidoking hurled a Shadow Ball into the air at Rocket Sparrow. Rocket Sparrow, temporarily paralyzed by the poison, tried desperately to dodge with its wings, but it was powerless. The Shadow Ball successfully struck Rocket Sparrow, sending it crashing back to the battlefield. The combined damage from Shadow Ball and poison didn't yet render Rocket incapacitated, but it was nearly there. Rocket, already a level below Nidoking, was completely powerless after sustaining the Shadow Ball's attack. It was now like a fish on a chopping board, at the mercy of the enemy. "Rocket, don't give up," Yu shouted, encouraging Rocket, hoping that this method would unleash Rocket's potential. However, Rocket, now completely devoid of the strength to fly, was like a tiger without claws. Just as Nidoking was about to unleash Earthquake, completely crippling Rocket, Yu gave up the struggle and quickly took out his Pokéball to retrieve Rocket. After all, while ground-type skills were ineffective against flying-type Pokémon, that was only true if the flying-type Pokémon was capable of flying. However, because the Rocket Sparrow had lost too much physical strength, it was already very good that it could barely support its body, let alone fly. Chapter 525 Cat Boss. Come back, Blaze. Yu didn't say anything about Blaze's failure to defeat Nidoking and its near disability to fight. He still felt a tinge of regret, though. After all, it was rare for him to come out for a fight, yet he didn't even take a single Pokémon with him. However, Yu might not have held out much hope. Blaze's strength was, after all, only at elite level. If it weren't for Blaze's having been with him the longest and having experienced the most battles, Yu wouldn't have brought it with him as a member of his current main Pokémon team. However, Yu had achieved his goal, to send Blaze as a vanguard to test the strength of a prime Pokémon. Not bad. If so, then I'll have some fun with you. It's time for Gyarados to stretch its legs. The massive size and fierce aura of Golden Gyarados upon its arrival shocked everyone in the audience and the trainers watching the battle. Nidoking, now on the rocky battlefield, felt it most clearly. Originally brimming with awe, seemingly invigorated even under the constant torment of the negative effects of burning, Nidoking, upon seeing Gyarados' ferocious face, felt a faint tinge of fear. He even inched back imperceptibly. Gyarados, gazing at the massive figure opposite him, a massive beast in the eyes of the other Pokémon, Gyarados roared heavenward. It seemed to intimidate, yet also to express disdain. While Nidoking's face was itched with anger, he dared not make any unnecessary movements. Gyarados, before Yu could issue a command, Gyarados launched the first attack, unleashing a water cannon. Having sensed the previous battle from its Pokeball, Gyarados had memorized Nidoking's initial aggressive attack on Scrab. The water cannon, launched directly at Nidoking, seemed to transform into a savage water dragon, tearing through space and slicing through the air, creating a roaring sound. It looked as if it was about to rip its target to shreds. Xiao's reaction was incredibly quick. The moment Gyarados was dispatched, he was already on guard. Seeing the water cannon piercing through layer after layer of invisible barriers with unstoppable force, Xiao didn't hesitate. He immediately gave the order, Nidoking, use Destruction Beam. Nidoking instantly condensed a beam of orange energy, blasting it towards the water dragon that was now tearing towards him. The water dragon and the energy beam collided with a muffled sound. At the moment of contact, the two energies, which had been at a stalemate, unsurprisingly began to tilt towards Nidoking. As if trying to put up a final resistance, Nidoking let out a sadistic and unwilling roar. It was clear that the energy column of the destruction ray seemed to thicken slightly at that moment. However, it was completely ineffective against the water cannon created by the water dragon. Nidoking's voice suddenly rang out again, but this time it wasn't a roar to increase the power of his destruction ray. Instead, the negative effects of Nidoking's burns took effect. Flames danced around him, and the pain on Nidoking's face was clearly visible. It seemed that the pain from the burns distracted Nidoking's attention, and the destruction ray, which had at least held out for a while, instantly lost its original power. The water cannon struck Nidoking fiercely, instantly sending him backwards. The rocks behind him were even unable to withstand the impact and were instantly shattered. When the smoke and dust from the impact cleared, the true form within was finally revealed. Nidoking's massive body collapsed onto the battlefield, like a newly built mound. The circles in its eyes indicated its inability to fight. Impressive, truly impressive. As expected of a trainer from the mysterious East, Xiao's face was filled with amazement, brimming with curiosity about the mystical lands of eastern China. After retrieving his Nidoking, Xiao didn't immediately send out his next Pokémon. Instead, he sank into a moment of deep thought. Yu simply watched quietly, not interrupting. After all, everyone has their own time to think about their strategy. This was a sign of respect for every Pokémon trainer, and also for himself. Yu, though patient, waited for the other Pokémon to be sent out, but the creature in the field simply didn't have the time or energy for that. With a naturally short temper, it surveyed the battlefield. After a brief pause, it let out a deafening roar of impatience. The roar echoed without the referee's need for a warning. Xiao snapped out of his reverie. Sorry. After being startled awake by Gyarados' roar, Xiao looked slightly bewildered, then gave Yu and the referee an embarrassed smile. Your name is Yu, right? You're incredibly skilled. As a sign of respect, I can't hide my abilities any longer. Xiao took a deep breath, as if making a firm decision. At that moment, his entire aura shifted. Come out, prepare for battle. My strongest ally, come out. Cat Boss entered with an elegant stride, his slightly gloomy eyes fixed intently on Gyarados. What kind of look was that? It was the look of someone observing prey, the look of someone with a sense of superiority. But upon closer inspection, it made some sense. After all, the Cat Boss and Meow Meow are a very special group. Which Cat Boss has not emerged from the constant challenges? Their strength is self-evident, not to mention that they sometimes bring a group of younger brothers with them, so they naturally have this momentum. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.